You see many films, there's a great confusion, especially in my particular genre of work. There's a great confusion between the words mystery and suspense. And the two things are absolutely miles apart. You see, mystery is an intellectual process, like in a whodunit. But suspense is essentially an emotional process. Therefore, you can only get the suspense element going by giving the audience information. And I dare say you've seen many films which have mysterious goings-on. You don't know what's going, why the man is doing this, why that, and you're about a third of the way through the film before you realize what it's all about. And to me, that's completely wasted footage, because there's no emotion to it.
We are tonight's entertainment.
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Excellent!
Hello everyone and welcome to the Movie Mania Podcast, where we talk about films past, present and future. And if you're feeling mad, it's okay, because we all go a little mad sometimes. I am here with the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. TARDIS Reviews, aka Trilbee. Hello Trilbee, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm just sitting here. Everyone's probably watching me. Well, let them. They'll see what type of person I am. I'm not even going to swat that fly. They'll see, and they'll say, why, these guys doing the podcast wouldn't even hurt a fly.
Why, thank you, Mrs. Bates. Yeah.
How oddly specific. Anyway, how are you doing, Bandit?
I am good. It's, like, as we always start with a bit of personal news each week. Yes, everyone, there's time codes in the description, so you can skip forward if you don't really care. But, I almost
What are we, 20% personal life?
That's right. Yes, thanks to Sam Petey for sending us that pie chart of all the different things we talk about. I noticed only 33% is actual content, and the rest is all the other stuff.
I think that's an overestimation.
Yeah. No, well, a big storm hit the east coast of Australia, so, like, all the cities have been flooding, and I sort of live in a flood area anyway. And, I was sitting here working away, the rain was hitting really hard, and I got an SMS alert from the SES, which is a state emergency service, saying flood evacuation warning, possible evacuations in the next 24 hours, so get ready to go. And I was like, well, that's good enough for me. So I was like, I'm not going to wait around. Grabbed my computer, stuffed it up on the highest shelf, jumped in the car, took off. Because in the next town over, my mum lives there, but she's up on top of a hill. So I'm like, well, I'm going to go there. That's not going to flood. But you're not supposed to drive like during that kind of storm. And I'm out driving around all these big things of water and all that sort of stuff. And I go past like the local liquor store, which is closed. But even though it's closed, all the local drunks were still sitting out front. With their various bottles and cans, just sitting there drinking, going, yep, water's getting much higher now.
Do you think they just go to the bar, they just slosh around in the water, and the bartender's like, usual, Terry? Usual? You want the same? It's like, yeah, same.
Yeah, I was like, now might not be a good time to start drinking, but whatever. But yeah, fortunately nothing flooded, so it was okay. So anyway, how was your week, Trilbee?
Can't quite top that, really. It has just been gloriously sunny over the past few days, which is surprising considering where I live. No flood warnings yet. It could happen at any moment. We are just waiting. Waiting for the rain to come. No, had a week off from work, which was good, and I was thinking, week off from work, I can actually get caught up on my reviews and my writing. Somehow, that never happened. I don't know how I somehow wind up with no free time despite a week off, but that's just how it works. Maybe I'm just terrible at time management.
You're a busy bee, aren't you? You're a very busy bee.
Maybe those 4 days I just spent sleeping non-stop are kind of attributed to it. But hey, that sounds like something I'd do.
Well, that's sleep debt. They say was sleep debt, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I did manage to get to the cinema a couple of times this week, so I have actually caught up on quite a few of the releases, which is good, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little while.
Yes. But for now, shall we get into movie news?
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent
and horrifying news story. Cannonball!
So this is the news, everyone, where we look at stuff that happened in the week of movies and talk about it. Oh, God, I'm still tired. All right. Now, the weekend box office trade.
Sorry.
These time zones. The weekend box office for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles apparently lands a disappointing number one. I don't know how you can have a disappointing number one, but it says here, following the short and unremarkable one-weekend run in the top spot, X-Men Apocalypse slid a painful 66% this weekend, making way for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows to open at number one despite an unimpressive start of its own. So that's kind of like Ugly Bridesmaid syndrome. He's like, TMNT 2 did not open stupendously strong, but it still did better than X-Men Apocalypse did in its second week.
Yeah, it called it deflated expectations. But...
Yes. Well, who would have thought that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 would perform a little bit better in its second week than X-Men Apocalypse? But have you noticed that's been happening a lot with movies? Like with Batman v Superman.
I wasn't expecting... you go before I talk.
Like with Batman v Superman, that's when everyone started talking about the second week drop. Like previously no one really ever cared about a second week drop. But then after that, it was people like Civil War had a big drop too, but it had a bigger start. So that's kind of why. And then X-Men Apocalypse, now with this one. So maybe it's just the era we're living in. You have a bigger opening, but then a bigger drop in the second week. What do you think?
Yeah, movies are becoming really hype-driven and front-loaded, so second week drops are to be expected. But I think TMNT, while it didn't have like a stellar box office, the first one didn't have a great box office run. It did do well. It made money. We got a sequel, but that opened in August towards the tail end of summer. And when we have so much more competition, like Warcraft, Angry Birds, Civil War, X-Men Apocalypse, it just doesn't quite compete. And with so many big, massive 3D blockbusters, that some of them are going to underperform, like Alice Through the Looking Glass. That kind of just came and went. That is pretty much bombed in the vein of like a John Carter of Mars or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I forgot to go see that.
You got lucky. Wasn't great. I know Trey liked Alice Through the Looking Glass. I could understand it having an appeal, but it just didn't really do anything for me. But with so many films, some of them are going to fall by the wayside, and you're going to have a lot of big bombs, and you're going to have a lot of big successes. I've noticed you only have either huge success or huge disappointment nowadays when it comes to blockbusters. There doesn't seem to be a lot of middle ground.
Yeah, or if there is, we just don't notice it because it's the middle.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Whereas, like, what happens is that TMNT can make, say, $20-something million opening weekend, and it can be considered a massive disappointment. But something like The Nice Guys can make $5 million opening weekend and slowly chug along for a few weeks, and it can be considered a success because it's got a much smaller budget. Success is relative based on how big the film is, and I think it's in moments like this you kind of miss that. I'm sure studios miss the mid-tiered blockbuster, like a $60 million film that can be marketed big, and then you have huge returns, kind of like Deadpool. I think we need a few more of those, and it's amazing that something like Deadpool can just completely wipe the floor box office-wise with X-Men Apocalypse, despite costing about a quarter of the budget. I think that's amazing, and I think with X-Men Apocalypse you're going to see the budgets get sliced down the road. If you wanted to see the X-Men go to space, forget those dreams, because that's not going to happen in the next installment if you look at these box office returns. So it's interesting, and I think that everything's so hype-driven that you have a big opening weekend, and then you've just got to move on to the next blockbuster standing in line. It's become so competitive.
Totally.
So that's all I have to say on that subject.
Well, it turns out that after all this time, moving on to the next story, the Iron Man 3 director Shane Black has finally come out to defend his Mandarin twist in Iron Man 3. Way to ride that hot streak, dude. I don't know why he's suddenly choosing now to come out and defend it. Maybe he's got another movie upcoming or something. But
he's promoting The Nice Guys.
Ah, there we go. That's why he's bringing it up. Okay, well, would you like to hear his excuse / explanation for the Mandarin twist?
Go for it, because I love the twist, and I want to know if we're on the same page.
Really, you like the Mandarin being turned into a soccer hooligan?
Hey, Ben Kingsley, soccer hooligan. I think that's like 10 out of 10. Best movie
Actually,
in the MCU.
that's a movie I'd like to see a spin-off for. Well, here's what Shane Black said. He said, "We may have done our job a bit too well in a way, because we succeeded in actually having a surprise in the middle of a big summer movie where you normally know virtually everything about it before you go in. And when I say we did our job too well, I meant that some of the fans felt fooled. They felt like they'd been led down one path and then sold a bill of goods. It's hard, because I want to please the fans, but in this case I thought, and we all thought, that it was just a very interesting and very layered decision to take the Mandarin in." So basically he's like, it's
we
a
were
great
too
twist.
good.
Yeah, he's like, it's a great twist because you didn't see it coming, but, it was so good that people were upset by it. I don't know.
You know what?
How do you digest
I agree.
that? Really?
I agree with him. I honestly do, because I've been a defender of the Mandarin twist since day one, and I think what happened was that after the Avengers became a billion-dollar film and geek culture and superhero movies were so mainstream that it hurt, and what happens is that when you have like comic book fans and that you've got people who they know who are trying to get into comic book movies, they like being ahead of the game. They like knowing, the Mandarin, he's got the 10 rings, he's this Chinese villain, he's one of Iron Man's first villains, here's his powers, this ring does that, and so and so. They love being that guy. And then when they lead people on and say, the Mandarin's this and that, and then the movie comes out and that doesn't happen, they get pissed off. And it's kind of like, I'm not going to see Civil War because it's not following the comic books. I'm not going to see Days of Future Past because it didn't follow the comic books, which I've heard many people say. It's kind of like how Game of Thrones, you get so many people who feel so entitled because they've read the books ahead of time, and they like knowing. They like that position of somewhat of like kind of power, of nerd power, which is kind of like nothing.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of played into Iron Man 3, and because the whole marketing campaign was all about Ben Kingsley as this terrorist figure, this really powerful foe
that was set up in the first movie. Yes.
Yeah. Not directly, but
his
felt
terrorist
duped.
group, the 10 Rings, a real terrorist group. So did Guy Pearce set that up? Or is that just a massive coincidence? Who knows? Don't think about that.
There is that Marvel short, Hail to the King, I think it's called, or Hail the King, where it's Ben Kingsley's John Slattery character. He gets arrested and he's put in prison, and then he's going to be brought forth in front of the real Mandarin because he sort of like took his name.
That's right.
And I think that's sort of like
that was
their way out of it.
For them seeing the backlash against the Mandarin twist, which I appreciate that Marvel did that. A lot of other movie studios wouldn't even do that, but Marvel does. That's why we love you, Marvel. But, just because an audience doesn't see a twist coming doesn't make it good. To use the one that we're all waiting for in the next, following on from Force Awakens, whatever the next movie is going to be called, like Rey's parents. You could make Rey's parents, Jabba the Hutt. No one would see that coming, but it doesn't mean it's a good twist, No,
correct.
And it's like,
correct.
Like the Mandarin is also like, it's fine doing that switch of like, this guy's not really the villain, it's the other guy. But the Mandarin is a real character. He's supposed to be a real character. And he's got like a really interesting dynamic with Iron Man. And you're throwing that really awesome character in the trash in exchange for the same story they've done in both of the other Iron Man movies, which is, no, it's a rival businessman. Like, all his enemies are rival businessmen. It's like, why would you throw away an original, cool, interesting villain for another generic storyline that you've done before? I don't think it was a good pick. I love Guy Pearce, and he had some cool dragon tattoos, but just him going, I am the Mandarin was... not very satisfying, I found.
Yeah, I think the twist was in keeping with the themes of the movie, because the Avengers, like the whole Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the MCU has kind of been a massive 9/11 allegory. Something bad happens in New York, and then there's all these tensions and post-traumatic stress and surveillance and Captain America the Winter Soldier and such. And I think that the Mandarin twist kind of played into that allegory and how and into propaganda and stuff that we see on the news all the time. And I think it did its job so well that, like the Mandarin said, you'll never see me coming. And people didn't see the twist coming, and they got really annoyed. I do think that obviously people can point, because it was like 3-4 years ago, the movie, they can say, oh, it doesn't work comedically, it clashes with the tones and stuff. And those are legit complaints if those are yours. But when the twist happened online, there was a lot more people saying it wasn't like the comics than there were having legitimate arguments. I saw it firsthand, and that's why I think it has to do with like geek entitlement and everything like that.
Well,
I saw it
entitled
firsthand
geek myself. As disappointed as I was with that twist, all is forgiven with Marvel, because they did do that Hail to the King short thing where they say to Ben Kingsley's character, we're going to take you to meet the guy whose name you stole. So presumably there is a real Mandarin out there somewhere that Guy Pearce modelled Ben Kingsley's character off. So, I mean, if they do end up making an Iron Man 4, we can still get an Iron Man. See, that's the thing. It's like, as a DC fan, you're like, well, we can't get a good Lex Luthor now. We can't get a good Doomsday now. We can't get a good Death of Superman story now. They could still do good Mandarin stuff if they wanted. They've left that open. So all is forgiven,
and
Marvel.
And I think with Lex Luthor for the DC universe, all they have to do is say, Lex Luthor in your prison, Lex Jr., you've got a phone call, and then Bryan Cranston, as the real Lex Luthor, is on the other side of the phone. That's all they need to do.
Which is essentially...
You can retcon.
Which is basically the same as what Marvel did with the Hail to the King thing.
Yeah, exactly.
You're still following Marvel, Warner Brothers.
Even when you mess up your villains, you can't help but copy.
You can't even fix your mistakes in the same way that Marvel does. All right.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, next bit of news story. Tom Hiddleston has addressed some of the James Bond rumors. And he said, the article here says, his blunt response, I don't think it's that blunt. He just basically says, I don't think that announcement is coming, that he's going to play James Bond, that is. He says, I'm very gratified to hear the enthusiasm, but your guess is as good as mine, to be honest. So basically, he's like, hey, I'm flattered, but yeah, it's probably not going to happen. So what do you reckon? Do you reckon he's being just honest there, or do you reckon he's like, I'm in negotiations, so I'm going to pretend like I don't care so I can ask for more money? What do you reckon?
I think he's honest. He's
I
honest
think so
because there's so much in the news at the moment about, the next James Bond's going to be revealed next week. Daniel Craig stepping down as Bond. There's all of this stuff, but people are forgetting one very crucial thing. The rights to James Bond are in flux right now. Sony, after Spectre, have to auction off the rights again. They can buy them back, or another studio could get them. Disney, Universal, or whoever else can get the rights to James Bond. No one has authority to cast yet. And no one's talking about this. They're going to auction the rights in a couple of months' time. I don't know when. Sony can buy them back if they have the money, which they probably do, because nothing's making money for them now except for Bond. Yeah. Sony is kind of flagging as a movie studio at the moment.
Yeah.
And they really want a franchise, especially if Ghostbusters bombs. They really want a new franchise. Disney could buy it with all that.
Safe to say it will not bomb.
Hey, I have a feeling it might not be $1 billion film, but I think people are going to be curious enough.
Guaranteed
but
success.
Yeah, or at least guaranteed modest returns. But I think Disney could buy it with their massive Scrooge McDuck money pile. Universal, after making like $4 billion films last year. 20th Century Fox. Anyone could get the Bond franchise when they get auctioned in a few months' time, but until that happens, no one's going to be casting Bond yet. And if that does happen, if somebody does get cast as Bond in the next few weeks, then that means the auction has already happened and that the rights have lapsed to another company. So that's what's happening at the moment. And I'm from the UK, so I have my sources.
Who would you pick as James Bond, if you could?
Idris Elba.
Yeah, me too. I want Idris Elba.
People are saying he's too old, and fair enough, because you do want a Bond to have some like another 10 years of films left in him and to be a believable action star. But Idris Elba, he can be a big, intimidating presence, and I think it would be interesting to see a seasoned Bond. Whereas with Daniel Craig's Bond, we had a Bond that was kind of just starting out. Like in Casino Royale, he just became a 00 agent. Yeah. So I think it could have a different dynamic, and if you could give Idris Elba Bond a spunky white sidekick as opposed to just a goofy black sidekick like you might give him otherwise if it was another white Bond. Yeah. Just reverse the races.
That's right. Like, yeah, and I mean, who cares if he's a bit older? Because it's James Bond. Like, James Bond is probably the one character that you can play, if you're an actor, you can play as a sex symbol, even if you're 60. Like, everybody used to make jokes about, like, Sean Connery and Roger Moore being, like, so old. They're, like, the sexiest grandpa ever. So,
and I think it'll be interesting.
And it's interesting.
It'd be interesting to have an older Bond that might have to rely on gadgets and technology a bit more, but he can still throw an epic punch when necessary. I think he would be my choice. But I wouldn't be sad if Tom Hiddleston did get the role. Or they were talking about Jamie Bell, which a few years ago I thought would have been a stupid choice. But after seeing him beef up for Fantastic Four last year, obviously he wasn't massive, but he beefed up for the role of Ben Grimm. He could make a believable action star, and I think he's got charm.
Yeah, totally, absolutely.
Do you have a choice?
Oh yeah, I want Idris Elba too. Either that, or I always thought that Tom Hardy would be a good James Bond. Like, you watch him in his character in Inception, and I'm like, I could see him as James Bond.
yeah, that's a good pick.
So, moving over to DC news, there's been some Twitter shenanigans and confusion about the title for the Justice League movie. So, who was it that came out and cleared this up? Jeff Johns came out and cleared up. Did you hear about this?
I saw the headlines, but I didn't actually read anything. So why don't you fill me in?
I didn't bother to read anything either. But
you were counting on me.
No. It's just it's not really a story. Come to think of it, it's just the internet did another one of those leak things, all possible Justice League title names, and I was like, when I read this first, I was like, well, it's called Justice League Part 1, isn't it? Because there's Part 1 and Part 2. What else is there to leak? But Jeff Johns came out and said on Twitter, clearing up any misconceptions, the Justice League movie is called Justice League. Happy Friday.
Okay, I'm just looking on geekfeed.com right now. They reported on the story. Right, the rumored titles were Justice League United, Justice League Angels and Demons, Justice League Gods Among Us, and Justice League Gods Among Men. So those were supposedly the leaked or rumored titles, and then Jeff Johns just goes like, nope, calm down, internet, you idiots.
Well, some of them sounds like they could be real, especially the Gods and Men and Gods Among Men. That's all Zack Snyder's thing. Always goes on about that.
Well,
but
Gods Amongst Us was the name of the video game, wasn't it? As well as the current comic book title.
Mind you, if it's a 2-part Justice League and it was Gods Among Us and then Gods Among Men, that'd be a good kind of double thing. But it's weird because he doesn't say it's called Justice League Part 1. He says it's just called Justice League. So if it's not called Justice League Part 1, then Part 2 is obviously going to be called something else. So maybe one of those names will be right.
Yeah, kind of like how how the next Infinity War Avengers films won't be called Avengers Infinity War Part 1 or Part 2. They'll have their own separate titles. I think that was something that was spoken about a few weeks ago.
Okay, yeah. Look, DC's got bigger fish to fry right now than having to worry.
They've got bigger problems than the title of their films.
Yeah,
but you know that the writing department is so messed up. You can just imagine there's 10 people sat around a table just looking at a front page of a script, just going, "We can't even get the title. We've not even got the first scene yet." I can imagine that's happening right now.
They've got like a booby trap in the door, so every time Zack Snyder tries to walk through and say, "Hey, let's do this," he falls through a trapdoor and gets put back in his office again, and he's like, "Oh."
Just Home Alone style. "Hey guys, can I come in?" And then just a can of paint on a string, just boom, right in the face.
Be like Mr. Birds. I have a feeling you'll be dropping your suggestion. Press the button, trapdoor opens.
Brilliant. Oh gosh. But,
finals.
Yes. Speaking of DC, have you seen the trailer for the Ultimate Edition of Batman v Superman?
No.
Okay, it's just a lot of clips from. It was basically a 2-minute trailer because they're doing this 3-hour cut, this R-rated cut on Blu-ray when it comes out in July or August time.
Yeah.
There was a lot of stuff that we'd seen before from the movie, quite a lot of action clips, but the trailer showed, like, you know, in Batman v Superman, that the inciting incident doesn't happen on screen, like this whole thing in Africa, and then everyone starts talking about it. There was quite a bit of that in the trailer. And I'm just thinking, why is the inciting incident of the movie not in the theatrical cut?
Mm.
That's like basic 101 storytelling stuff. It'd be like we're going to talk about it later, but it's like in North by Northwest. If Roger Thornhill didn't get kidnapped straight away,
yes,
it would be like what if when a movie has no inciting incident.
He just walks in the hotel and then it cuts, and next thing you know, he's at a farmhouse called Townsend. And it's just like,
no, it just,
okay, how did he get there?
No, it's not even that. It's just like he wakes up. The movie starts. He goes to his office, and then it just cuts to him in the police station, and then he's talking about
those people tried to kill me. Cary Grant.
Exactly.
I'm Cary Grant. I'm going to marry my stepsister or stepdaughter. Didn't he do that? Didn't he marry his stepdaughter or something? Some creepy thing like that. Anyway.
I'll have to Google that. But it seems like that's going to be a big focus in the ultimate cut of Batman v Superman. And so you cannot fix that. That was never truly working.
Yeah, and it's like, see, so I'm sorry, I don't want to go off on another big tangent, but see, that's one of the things I find so confusing about that movie is, like, everyone agrees that one of the best scenes in the whole movie is the bit at the beginning where Bruce Wayne is going through the destruction from Man of Steel and, you know, all that, and he saves the kid and all that. That's the best part. That scene right there, you set up everything you need to know between the rivalry between Batman and Superman. Maybe you fine-tuned it out with some conversations with Alfred, but you don't need to bring up this thing in Africa to try to manufacture. That sets it up perfectly. Just leave it at that. Yeah. That's all you need. It's like the one good thing you have going, and you decide to keep paving over it. And they focus on that rather than all this other stuff, and it's just really strange. Also, with this 3-hour special release, there was also a rumor a while back that maybe they were going to re-release that 3-hour special in theaters, so all the hardcore fans will go back and watch it again in theaters. And I thought about it, and I was like, actually, if they do that, that's probably a really clever way of making their money back. Maybe it ended up costing them more money than... I'm sure they ran the numbers or whatever, but I thought... felt for sure they were going to do that, because I was like, why wouldn't you? But yeah, probably the bean counters like...
Yeah, no, double dip.
Wouldn't work. Yeah. Like I would have. That's what I would have done.
Wouldn't it be so funny if they re-released that special edition cut or whatever in theaters, and then it has like a 90% second week drop? Imagine those headlines. Like, even if it was like completely reasonable, like obviously it was playing in 1,000 theaters, and then it went to 1 theater for the second week and had a 90% drop because those headlines. That would be a fun day on the internet.
Okay, so moving on, I was going to wait until Trey called in, because yes, ladies and gentlemen, Trey should be calling in sometime soon. I was going to wait till he got here before I brought this up, but Bryan Singer's off the X-Men movies. Hooray!
Yeah, and there was much rejoicing.
There was much rejoicing. Fantastic. Good news. Now, apparently it was an amicable breakup. He didn't get fired or something. He's just like, no, I want to do something else. Kind of like how I wanted to do something else after X-Men 2 and everything I did failed, so I came crawling back to the franchise. I want to do that again so I can come crawling back later. Yeah, you do that, Bryan Singer. Head off.
Yeah, he's got 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea next. So I never thought he was going to be making the next installment in the franchise. But if he's leaving completely, I think Bryan Singer, he can... Apocalypse is obviously a low point in the films he's directed. in terms of the X-Men films he's directed. But he's had a good track record, and I don't think he's got anything to be ashamed of. X-Men 1 and 2 are like great early 21st century comic book classics. I think that Days of Future Past is a terrific film, and Apocalypse is just kind of middling, average, so-so. But that's a good average, and I think that Bryan Singer should quit while he's ahead. To be honest, I'd love to see some new blood get attached to the franchise, because I think Apocalypse ended in a place where you could have many more sequels, even though it's like a reboot, definitive ending, prequel. It's trying to be so many things, and I think the X-Men franchise, Bryan Singer needs that franchise more than the franchise needs him.
Exactly.
So I think that Matthew Vaughn's probably not going to do it because he's doing Kingsman and he's probably got his schedule booked.
He's moved on too. I don't think he'll come back. But
I'd love to see him write another X-Men movie, not necessarily direct.
Yeah.
But I think it would be great to get.
Actually.
Yeah, because people say that Joss Whedon should take over, which may sound like a predictable choice because he did Avengers and stuff. But Joss Whedon, he used to write X-Men comics in the 80s and 90s. So he is related to the material to an extent. But I think just get some fresh blood in there, because you've got a new cast of characters. You've got a new Jean Grey, you got Psylocke, you've got all these new characters and everything. Get some new blood creatively as well. That's all I can really say, because Apocalypse is just so hampered by its own nostalgia. And the metaphor you brought up last week on the podcast was great. It's like, oh, guys, remember how awesome it was? Wasn't that great? I thought that was terrific. You were right on the money there.
Well, I know there's a lot of Bryan Singer fans out there. I apologize for bagging on Bryan Singer so much. I don't think he's terrible. Certainly not. He's definitely not a terrible director by no stretch of the imagination.
I don't think he's made a bad X-Men movie. Like he's not made. They're not all good.
He hasn't. Like he didn't make X-Men 3. He didn't make Wolverine Origins. Like all his movies at worst are still good. You know, they're still average. Like his worst is just average. So that's a pretty good track record to have. I think, it's like I got nothing against him. It's just there seems to be this thing in Hollywood that when directors return to franchises that they left, it never seems to work out well. You know, like when Peter Jackson returned for the Hobbit trilogy, wasn't the same. Now when Bryan Singer's returned, so maybe that's a lesson for directors. Once you leave, you shouldn't go back again.
Yeah, or at least have fuller responsibility again. I wouldn't say no if Bryan Singer was going to be a producer on future films, like how Jon Favreau is still technically a producer on Iron Man and Avenger films. Stuff like that.
Totally.
Maybe have some influence, but I think have someone new in that director's chair. Have somebody else call action every day. Yeah,
because the director's the one with the vision. It's the vision that's what it's really all about, you know. And Bryan Singer, he does have good stuff to contribute. There's I especially like the way he. I mentioned this a bit in Apocalypse review, so I won't go into it all again. But I especially like the way that Bryan Singer figures out ways that different mutant powers sort of complement and work in with each other during battles and stuff. Like you see that with the Sentinels in the beginning of Days of Future Past. See, stuff like that Bryan Singer's really good at. So keep him on as producer so he can keep contributing stuff like that. But a new director's the way to go. But what was it you were going to say about the poster?
Oh yeah, there was a controversy, or as far as you can have on the internet nowadays, where for X-Men Apocalypse, it's in the trailers and it's in the movie. It's a minor spoiler, I guess. But there's a scene where it's in the final battle at the end, and Apocalypse holds Mystique by the neck. And Jennifer Lawrence is being choked out, and she's thinking, "Finally, God, I can leave this franchise." As she slowly dies, and what happened is that 20th Century Fox made some marketing banners, by the side of a road. These really huge posters of that sequence of Apocalypse holding Mystique by the neck. And what happened was that the internet, being the internet, had a big outrage about it, and it was mainly Rose McGowan, no idea who she is, apparently she's important, who complained about it, saying that it advocated violence against women and how it was really offensive and stupid. And what happened is that 20th Century Fox apologized, and they've removed the billboards. Now, obviously, a lot of people were very, very a lot of people were very, very angry, saying he's the villain. He's meant to be villainous, and and what happened? Like, I thought about it. What happened was that I saw the banner and I thought, yeah, it's what I see is Apocalypse being a bad guy and choke holding this person who has been quite a badass in quite a few films. Like, remember X-Men 2 when she just single-handedly cleared that room full of people?
Right.
And I think, how is Mystique, this really powerful person, going to get out of this situation and fight this even more powerful foe? But then I thought about it for a moment, and while I'm not saying that it's completely offensive and it is completely it's advocating violence against women and stuff, I think when you remove the context and the fact that there's no other posters like it, it does seem a bit off. Like, there's no poster of Apocalypse pummeling Professor Xavier into the ground like he does in the movie. There's no poster of Apocalypse breaking Quicksilver's legs. There's nothing like that. And of course you have these big superpowers, these flying angels, these lightning goddesses and stuff like that, and magnetic people. Strangling is very down to earth and grounded.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that this, like, all of the outrage is warranted, but I get it. I kind of see where it's coming from, but because it's the internet, it gets blown
I see where it's
massively
coming
out of
from, but I
proportion.
totally disagree with it, because I'm like, look, if you want to have your female stars in the movies equal with men, great. If you want to have them, being tough and kicking ass as much as the guys, great. If you want to have them in the middle of big fight scenes and getting involved, great. But you can't then turn around and say, oh no, somebody beat up Jennifer Lawrence. If you want her in the fight scenes, she's going to have to take a beating. You can't have it both ways. You know?
Yeah.
You can't say that's violence against women. No, we want Jennifer Lawrence to just stay in the kitchen. You know, what is that? Supposed to be equality now? It's like, no, you can't have it both ways. If she's in the fight, she's going to get choked out or slapped around a bit. That's the way it works.
Yeah, Max Landis said on Twitter,
wow,
we want more,
what a horrible way to enter the conversation.
Hi, Trey.
What a horrible place to enter the conversation. Wow. I just walked in and I just hear, yeah, it's okay, you should slap Barat a little bit, said like Sean Connery. Oh
that
my
was
god.
a really bad time into the conversation.
It was
So you didn't hear
the
what
worst
happened as
time.
we got up to that.
No, man, what's going on?
Well, apparently,
we're
because
talking about how...
Sorry, you go ahead, Trilbee. You explain it.
We're talking about how there was that controversy online about the X-Men Apocalypse banner and Mystique being strangled.
And they're like, no, that's violence against women. I was saying, look, if you want women to be action movie stars and to get involved in action, you can't then turn around and complain when some of them get choked out. You can't have it both ways. You can't have them being an action star and then say you don't want them to get hit. So that's what,
this
that's what I was saying. By the way, how did you call? I didn't click on the Skype thing. You just suddenly appeared.
I just joined the call.
That was scary. That's like some government agent shit.
So that means anyone else on my Skype list could just call in now and just be on the podcast. That's weird.
In theory, yeah, totally.
Well, welcome, Trey. We were talking about X-Men Apocalypse.
Have you guys talked about?
We were talking about X-Men
Have you guys talked
Apocalypse
about the Rogue
because
One?
Bryan Singer's gone. So.
Oh, he's gone? Are you sure? Well, he's gone for now. He's going off to do 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but he's probably going to come back because he always comes back.
Shh, let's just enjoy the time that he's away.
We'll get a good movie while he's gone, and then he'll come back, and yeah.
All right. Well, Trey, now that you're here, I can hand the news reins over to you. The only other story I was going to bring up that Independence Day Resurgence is going to re-release the original Independence Day in theaters leading up to the new one, probably because no one can remember the original, so they're going to run like double features.
Or because they want to try to make a little bit more money on that merchandise and that brand because they may not have. But I think that's
which
just
is good thinking, like money-wise. Yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was that? There you go, Trey. What were you going to say about Rogue One?
Did you? Oh, have you guys talked about the reshoots yet and the Rogue One reshoots that are? Okay, well, for you guys that don't know, because I didn't write down any news, I thought you guys already got the news down. I do remember this though. The Star Wars Rogue One apparently is going to have like 40% of it is going to be reshot, which
40%
kind of concerns me. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
worrying,
worrying,
so what do you guys
isn't
think?
it? That's
it's a little worrying.
Right?
I mean, it's not like the movie comes out next month. It comes out in December, so they still have time. But it's a little disconcerting.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that bad. Like reshoots are scheduled all the time for big blockbusters. Like Marvel, they plan for reshoots to happen months in advance. They actually make room in the schedule for reshoots. Obviously, according to the news stories, the Rogue One reshoots are going to be quite extensive. But I'd rather that they how far away is the film? Like 6-7 months away. I'd rather that they actually looked at it now and said this doesn't fit with the rest of the universe or something's not right here, and then fix it, as opposed to it's 2 months before release. What do we do?
Yeah, I think apparently what they were saying is that according to the report that I read, I think it was by Drew McWeeny, who also reported the Batman Superman stuff, that movie was in trouble way back when. So I buy this report. Apparently the Disney execs saw it and they felt like the film was too serious, too much like a war film, even though that was what they were signing the movie on back at Star Wars Celebration last year. They promised a war film set in the Star Wars universe. It is called Star Wars. They said it was too serious. They wanted a more Force Awakens like tone, which I don't want. I don't want every movie to be feel like A New Hope. I don't want that either. I want some diversity.
Isn't the point of the anthology movies that they're supposed to be, standalone with different kind of tones and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
In the same way that Ant-Man feels different from, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, where you can have separate tones for separate franchises. They're all kind of part of the same universe. You don't have to have.
I want to see an IG-88 movie.
Give me my Salacious Brie Crumb film. Yes, that's what I want. My Jabba the Hutt spinoff.
I want to see a movie just about the Sarlacc, not Boba Fett in the Sarlacc, just the Sarlacc. Just this shot of this giant mouth for 2 hours.
This giant anus in space.
Going,
Giant anus in space, a Star Wars story. I can see the posters now.
Star Wars Anthology, the butthole.
You'll be cast into the great anus of Carcoon. There you go.
That went off the rails quickly.
Very quickly.
So I think that's it for news, is it?
That's all I can remember. I didn't write anything down. My bad.
Sure, okay.
Let's get into the homework.
This week, each one of you has a homework assignment. You're going to go out, you're going to start a fight with a total stranger. You're going to start a fight, and you're going to lose.
All right, guys, so this is the homework section of the show, in which case we talk about the films that we've recently seen or were assigned to see. So anyone want to go first? Trilbee?
I finally got around to watching Angry Birds.
Yay, I saw it too. Did you hate it as much as I did?
I didn't hate it. It just... it is a thing that exists. It was okay. I like the animation, bright, colourful. A couple of funny jokes. Even though it was in all of the trailers, I still laughed my head off at the scene early on when Red kicks the bird instead of the football. I guess something about that just tickles me the right way. But I thought that they did possibly the best that they could have done when it comes to making a cohesive story out of throwing birds at pigs. And I think when that set piece happens towards the end, I thought it was really good, but it came around way too late in the game. It didn't last as long as it should have done. But I think it was okay. There's nothing really objectionable about it, and I think that Terrence,
you weren't horrendously bored?
Not really. I wasn't thoroughly engaged, but I think Sean Penn as Terrence kind of stole.
Put that on a t-shirt. I wasn't thoroughly engaged. I love that review. Yeah. I love the review.
Even when I'm talking about something that's mediocre, I can't help but sound up my own ass. I wasn't thoroughly engaged.
It's the most British saying ever. I mean, it wasn't thoroughly engaging, but it was fine, I suppose.
It was shallow and pedantic. I thought that the voice cast are okay. I think that Danny McBride was probably the voice standout. Jason Sudeikis was okay as Red, but I think obviously Red was annoyed at very reasonable things because it's such a happy-go-lucky island full of these flightless birds. But sometimes he was just a bit of an asshole. I guess sometimes it was like, come on, get a grip, man.
I wanted more of that. I wanted to see more of him just being an a-hole for like no reason.
Like, wait, aren't they supposed to be because it's angry? Aren't they supposed to be kind of douche? I mean, they're just
he's kind of the only one. Game. It's like I actually like look for our listeners, if you're taking kids to it, they'll love it. Okay, because lots of colors and explosions and fart jokes and funny stuff like that. It looks
really good. The animation.
Oh, the animation was great. Yeah, but man, it was like I actually almost like started to drift off about halfway through. I was doing that sort of sleep nod where you go,
that jerk back, but then
let me guess, was it
like you're back at Dreamland?
Yeah, you just get flung through the theater.
It was kind of like the writers. The writers, like, in the writing room where they're pitching ideas of, like, the story should be this, and then another one's like, no, the story should be this, then another one's like, no, a story should be this, and then like, yeah, that's good, let's go with that. And that's just how they wrote the script.
Yeah, like, the bit where you were drifting off.
False starts before it finally hit on something is like, yeah, okay, let's do this instead.
But Bandit, when you were drifting off, I'm assuming it was either the whole Mighty Eagle segment, or when the pigs were just doing their thing on the island. Was it one of those two segments?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of the second act. Yeah, it's the second act where the film just feels really directionless. Like there's not really any sort of momentum carrying it. And I'm sure that the kids may just like the colours and the countless pig puns. Countless puns. Oh my god, so many puns. But
as much as I did like that thing of the eagle peeing in the water after they've been drinking it, I thought that was funny.
Screening loved that.
Yeah.
They were just laughing at that the whole time. And I thought, surprisingly, I thought that the music was strangely epic and really well done. And it looks and sounds a lot better than a movie that's based off a smartphone app reasonably should. And totally. I think its mere existence kind of shows that the team went above and beyond. But it's not exactly going to be, this is the movie that made video game movies good from now on. This is the equivalent of Bryan Singer's X-Men or whatever. Yeah. It's not that film, and by the sounds of it, Warcraft isn't either. But,
yeah, that's what I hear too.
Yeah,
not seen it, but I want to.
Hopefully, Fassbender will kick that home run. That's how it works, isn't it? You kick a he'll kick the home run with.
Yeah, and the score will be 15 love. Yeah, and that Kanye West music will definitely help. That's exactly how that works. Yeah.
When in doubt, just put Kanye in.
That's what Kim Kardashian said.
Oh,
god damn it! That bloody crow's having a go at my car again. Oi! Get off my car!
Is it those angry birds? There's angry birds being fired at your car.
There's this bloody crow. It's like out the window from my office I could see my car, and he lands on top of my mirror, and he like looks down past his feet into the mirror, and he sees himself, and he's like and starts attacking the reflection. I wouldn't really care, but the mirrors on my car are those electric ones, and I'm worried that if he keeps doing it, he's going to wreck the mirror eventually.
That's amazing.
So yeah, as we're talking about angry birds,
you sounded so Australian. You sounded so Australian right there. Get off my car! There's this bloody bird out here messing with my car.
Go get it. Go get it, Dingo.
Go get the crow.
Now, so. Gonna go put it on the Barbie.
Oh my god.
I'm gonna get a picture.
Oh my god.
Oh no, he's flown off. Bloody hell. See, I just watched The Birds last night. Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds.
Just get some birdseed. Bandit, just get some birdseed and ammonia, and if it comes back, it'll eat the birdseed and it'll die over. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. If you really don't want to get rid of the bird, get some birdseed and ammonia. Yeah.
So yeah,
sorry.
Angry Birds. Yeah, like if you're a parent taking your kids will love it, but don't expect you to have a good time watching it. Is what I'm saying.
No.
Yeah.
It'll be a chore for you if you're a parent.
As these movies tend to be like it was Sony, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Name the last good Sony animated movie.
Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs?
Yeah, that was like 7 years ago?
Sucked. That sucked too.
The first one?
Pixels.
Yeah.
No.
No.
That was an animated movie, wasn't it?
It was a Sandler movie. It might as well have been.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Anything else, Trilbee?
We just kind of peed it out there for a minute.
Are you gonna cut out the part with the bird in your car? Did you put the timestamp in?
No, I think that's got to stay in.
You should leave it in.
Yeah, he has gone now. So.
Speaking of Sony, I watched Money Monster. I literally just got back from seeing it. That's why we recorded the podcast a bit later. Right. And I love watching Sony movies, and it's like drink whenever you see the product placement. Because Sony movies exist in worlds where every TV's a Sony TV, every laptop's a Vio laptop, every camera is a Sony camera. And then when you've got a movie like Money Monster, which takes place in a recording studio, they're doing a TV show, and they're thinking, oh god, all of the screens we can put, all of the cameras, we can put Sony logos everywhere. I just think it's strange. It's kind of like in Chappie, when that's a Sony movie, and they literally stop the plot so that they can put in their product placements, like the PS4s, and they get Chappie's consciousness inside a PlayStation 4. Even though the PlayStation 4 can't run the Order 1886 at 60 frames per second, let alone transfer human consciousness.
And why would the PlayStation 4 be viable in a time that's supposed to be set, like, what, 5 years from now? Like, from today? Like, what, the 2020s?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't it not be like a PS5 or something like that?
Unless the guy who has it is like an antiques collector. I don't know why he would have one.
Yeah. It's like being like, look at this really awesome PS2 I have. I mean, yeah, that system's not relevant anymore.
Anyway, Money Monster. I think it's funny when you get movies like this where millionaires make movies to sell to people, talking about how terrible rich people are. I think there's a certain irony there, but it was okay. Yeah, I think that it was way too long for what it wanted to be, and it's a polished, slick movie. Jodie Foster does a really good job, but I think it feels like too expensive, if that makes sense. It feels a bit too clean cut. You slice the budget in half, maybe set it in one or two locations, and you get a timeless thriller, sort of like Saw, or something along those lines, where you could just have edge of your seat thrills and make it topical as well. Maybe get one big name star in there like George Clooney. But it was okay. Yeah, I think that it's not a lot to say about it. I'm still kind of sitting on it because I guess I just got back from seeing it, and it clearly has a lot to say. I feel like it was a little bit too Hollywood, if that makes sense. It kind of has something really bittersweet at the end to say about how we think about the economy and banks and people continually screwing over the 99%, but it still wants to have a nice little bow on top and have a nice little happy ending and finish on a really nice shot and stuff like it's okay. I think that there were some really inspired moments in it. It goes in interesting directions, and I think George Clooney is just perfect in the role as just this really obnoxious, sleazy talk show host who always goes off script. I think he does really well. And the music by Dominic Lewis was actually really good. I want to listen to the score, like standalone. But yeah, it exists. It was more memorable than Angry Birds. But that's not going on the Money Monster poster.
Money Monster, it exists.
So
it exists, and it's not Angry Birds.
So if you were forced to give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, which way would you go?
I'd a tentative thumbs up.
Okay,
it's a 3-star film.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's not terrible.
Sense.
Well, actually, Trilbee, you reminded me because you gave me some homework a couple of weeks ago to see the animated movie Watership Down.
Yes,
which I finally saw.
Sleep at night.
Yeah. It's funny because when you mentioned Watership Down to me, for our listeners who don't know what that is, because I didn't know what that was, it's an animated movie, and it's all about this group of rabbits in a field, and a housing development is going to spring up there. They don't know that. They're just like, oh, I get a feeling something terrible is going to happen, and we know it's a housing development. So they have to sort of run across the woods to try to get to the hills to safety, and all these different animals try to kill them, and they run into all these kinds of problems. And yeah, it was during the time when Disney movies could still be crushingly sad and crushingly depressing, and like scare the absolute living daylights out of kids. Like some of those old Disney cartoons, like where Snow White is lost in the forest or whatever, and all the trees are they take on like spooky shapes and like reach out to her. Scary stuff. It was a lot like that.
I mean, bloody Bambi, opening scene of Bambi, running, and then you just hear a gunshot, and it's just quiet. And then they like hard cut to like the happy forest, like every time. Watch me, like that's incredibly jarring. Anyway, but yeah, you keep going.
Yeah, it was made in that time, and like throughout, I'd say for about the first 2/3 of the movie, there's this sense of dread throughout all of it because they're constantly in danger. Everywhere they go, they're constantly in danger, and you're just like, ooh, ooh. And then they finally make it to safety, and then it's kind of like. They realize they're all a bunch of males and they don't have any females, or does, as they're called. So they go to sort of like try to free some from different places, and But yeah, it's a really interesting movie, and yeah, it was kind of good to see the old-fashioned movies that scare kids.
Yeah, because this movie is kind of like a really interesting footnote in UK movies, because it came out like late 70s, and back then the BBFC, who they're the ratings board for UK films, and what they did was that they gave it a U certificate, which means it's suitable for all ages, everybody can see it.
Oh dear.
And even though the movie came out in 1977, 78, the BBFC say that every single year since then they have received complaints from parents saying that you said that the movie was suitable.
Especially the bit when the builders like fill in the rabbit holes and gas them, and it shows them all like trying to squeeze through this hole, and they're all like trying to get away from the gas, and their eyes are all bloodshot, and they're all like squashing into this hole trying to escape. Ugh.
Jesus.
Yeah,
it was scary, man.
It is grim. And
Bandit's trying to go to sleep, and he just sees like rabbits coming out. Like he's trying to he's counting, instead of counting sheep, he's counting like rabbits out of a hole. He's trying to go to sleep, and he has nightmares about rabbits being squeezed in the holes.
But the movie, it never gets shown on UK TV, because even though it's perfectly reasonable and everything, as long as you know what you're getting into, they just get so many complaints about it. All the time it gets shown, there's always complaints. They just think, why bother?
They show blood, and a lot of it.
Yep.
There's one where one of the rabbits is caught in the trap where it's choking him, and he's coughing up all this blood going...
Jesus!
And it's
Christ.
like, wow, man. It's pretty intense.
But
I think that's good for kids,
So having seen the traumatic Watership Down movie, are you excited for the Netflix miniseries? James McAvoy is going to be voicing Hazel, who voiced John Hurt, and you've got people like Nicholas Hoult, John Boyega, Ben Kingsley, Gemma Arterton, and some other people I'm sure missing.
That's how we brought it up in the first place, yeah.
Yeah, they're going to be doing 4 one-hour episodes on Netflix.
Now that
is it 2D animation? Trilbee, are they going to do it?
I don't think it's been announced. I'm assuming it's going to be 3D animation, although that's not. Don't quote me on that. It's at some point in 2017. It's going to be on Netflix outside of the UK. In the UK, it's going to be broadcast on BBC One.
Well, now I am looking forward to it. Now that I've seen the actual movie, but if they are turning it into a miniseries, I hope they're still keeping that scary, depressing tone. Otherwise, it'll be like the RoboCop remake, where they've stripped away all the gore and all the edge.
I need my men melting off the bone. I need to see the finger and like the skin melting off like
That's
it's
right.
paper.
I want my rabbit RoboCop movie, which is Watership Down.
Robo Bunny this summer. Yeah.
Hey guys, with RoboCop, let's take one of the most violent movies of the 80s and give him a stun gun. Let's give him a taser.
I like the RoboCop remake. Sue me. I like the remake.
No, it's not a bad movie. It's not bad.
It's not a bad movie.
Yeah, but then you just look back and you just forget it existed.
Yeah, I've obviously forgotten it, and I liked it when it came out. But...
I mean, my dad wasn't happy, but I liked it.
But the guy who played RoboCop, he's playing Rick Flag in Suicide Squad now, so I'm glad.
And
that
he's in
House of.
He played that one guy in House of Cards, the one that was going up against Frank Underwood this season.
Oh, is that him?
Yeah.
Oh, wow! I barely recognized him. He's so different.
Well, he looks so normal. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, how about that? That's a sign of a good actor when you don't know you've seen him in different things because that character's so diverse.
He's one of those He's one of the that guys. Like, oh hey, it's that guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a famous that guy.
Joel Kinnaman is that name. Joel Kinnaman. Okay, I think is that all the homework you got there, Trilbee? And
I believe so. Yeah.
All right. Well, I didn't watch any. I watched.
Oh, gee,
Hitchcock
what
movies.
A surprise! What a surprise!
I'm sorry. School ended this week, and I did finals. I'm sorry. I didn't have time to go out and watch them. I'm sorry I didn't see the new Ninja Turtles.
Shame on you valuing your education over this job that you don't get paid for.
Exactly.
Actually, the new Turtles film wasn't terrible.
I want to see it. I'm excited for it.
Actually,
it was exactly what you.
Actually, can we save that for next week? Because I want to see it so we
can
it's fine. It for next week.
All I'll say is that it's getting a beating by critics at the moment, but honestly, it's better than the first one, which shouldn't be an automatic endorsement. But it's got Bebop and Rocksteady and Krang and all of. You've got to have a certain suspension of disbelief naturally for the material, and I think people just aren't bringing that when they go and see it. It's like it's stupid. And obviously fun does not equal quality, like Trey, you always say. But it felt honest with itself. It was like, yes, we are doing a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. We're going to have Bebop, Rocksteady, we're going to have a Shredder, we're going to have Krang, we're going to just go all out, high concept, 80s dumb stuff. And I think it mostly stuck the landing. Like, obviously, you got to set the bar low for the material. Like, it's hardly going to be like a 5-star tour de force. But it was fun.
Right. Yes.
So that's my endorsement.
That's my opinion of the first movie. I'm like, hey, it was just it's in my opinion, the first movie is exactly what I got when I watched the old movies, because I didn't grow up with Ninja Turtles. I grew up, I watched Power Rangers more than I watched Ninja Turtles. But anyways, we'll get to Ninja Turtles next week. Yes.
Yeah, it should be fun.
And now our feature presentation.
Dun 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 chocolate syrup. All right, guys, this is our feature presentation, which we're going over the films of the master of suspense himself, Mr. Alfred Hitchcock. Anyone want to go first? Which one do you want to start with, guys?
Maybe we should just start with our overall views of
Alfred Hitchcock. We can.
Because in these, we don't just talk about the movies, we also sort of talk about the director and all that. Now,
yes.
So maybe to start with, Alfred Hitchcock, an amazing guy, master of suspense, and we should also point out that when we mentioned on the channel's Facebook page that we were going to be covering this, a couple of people said, oh, I'll have to actually watch some Alfred Hitchcock movies. So it's weird, because a lot of Alfred Hitchcock's movies, they're so... they're considered such classics in cinema, but because so few of them have been remade, a lot of people, young people today might not actually know Alfred Hitchcock stuff. Yes. Like Psycho's been remade terribly, and Dial M for Murder's been remade in Perfect Murder. So a lot of people might be unfamiliar with a lot of his movies, but basically he's... He's kind of like the Quentin Tarantino of his time. In a way.
He's the first superstar director.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
back
in many ways.
The director was just a person whose name would appear at the beginning of a movie. But Hitchcock was a real personality. He'd often put himself in his movies. He would give them introductions in Alfred Hitchcock Presents. He was a personality, and like people like we know, like Christopher Nolan, Steven Spielberg, Quentin Tarantino now. But back then in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Hitchcock was really the only director who kind of transcended his own material.
Right. Yeah. And he won a lot of battles with censors that sort of with censorship that sort of paved the way for creative freedom for other movies that would follow. So he made a big impact sort of in the movie industry as a whole. As a person, he had a lot of issues. He was a real sort of pervert, which we'll get into.
That doesn't surprise me. That does not
like
surprise
blondes.
Oh, he sure did, yeah. But if we, when we get into it, there's a biopic picture where Anthony Hopkins is playing Alfred Hitchcock, and Scarlett Johansson is playing the chick in the shower from Psycho, and in that they cover some of his issues, and like a lot of creative men like that, he had some demons, and a lot of his stuff seems to resolve around mummy issues. Like a lot of directors have daddy issues, his is mummy issues. So many of his movies have like an overbearing mother, or like sexually aggressive women, sort of thing.
Yeah,
it's like a recurring theme in a lot of his stuff. So, anyway, I'm rambling. You guys go on.
Well, my thing with Hitchcock is that, as someone who, got into the film scene, if you will, not just a few years ago, I'm still very young, Hitchcock was always a name that I heard. It was a name I always kind of, like, I feel like, when you're born in this day and age, you're born with a certain, kind of way of thinking in your brain film-wise. Like, you're born knowing the shower scene from Psycho. You're born knowing Star Wars, just Darth Vader, And so, going in to watch Psycho for the first time in its entirety, because I tried watching it when I was little, and by the time when the shower scene hit, I had to stop watching because I got so scared. So I never saw what happened after that. And so to watch the movie going and finishing it fresh, it really, the man definitely earned his name, because I'm sitting here to this day still getting freaked out by a film from 1960. A lot like Jaws, like when we talk about Spielberg and how I was getting legitimately frightened by this fake rubber animatronic shark, because some people are just that good of filmmakers. The reputation precedes him, but it's all true. He is the master of suspense.
Mm-mm. Yeah, the thing about Hitchcock is that one thing I've really noticed when watching a few of his films for this podcast is that he's so aware of the journey that he wants the audience to go through. He puts the audience's enjoyment and their experience watching first and foremost. Like Psycho, you can't watch that for a second time, if that makes sense. Like the first time you watch Psycho, because the thing about Hitchcock is that so many of like standalone moments. Even if you've not seen North by Northwest, you'll know of the crop duster scene. If you've not seen Rear Window, you know the iconography. If you have not seen Psycho, you know the shower scene, you know the twist, you know Norman Bates. People in 1960 watching it for the first time didn't know all of that. And Psycho, you can't even watch for a first time because you know all the twists and turns.
Yeah.
And everything about North by Northwest.
I'll get to that in a second. I'll get to that Psycho twist in a second, but yeah, go ahead, Trilbee, go ahead.
It's like everything about North by Northwest is like the way he introduces people and the way he introduces characters and establishing shots and actually sets up stories and to take so many twists and turns. He wants the audience to go on an adventure with these characters. He wants the audience to experience what they're experiencing, put them in their shoes. And I think even though he clearly was not a people person in real life, understatement, he was an audience person. He knew how to create a big event. Like he would use that by putting himself in his movies. Like the way he promoted Psycho, there's a trailer for Psycho where he's just going about a house, just talking about stuff and just talking nonsense.
In this room, because he always has that breathing because he's a big fat guy. He's like, in this room is something very important.
There's one moment where he just opens a cupboard and just closes it again.
And he's like,
and it's like, what was in that cupboard? What was in the cupboard? What did he see?
Yeah, he walked into these and then there's the boy, but we won't talk about him. And he just keeps walking no, go back and talk about it. What we mean? You can't just open that, and then it's like it was one of those great teasers for the movie. And like what they said when you can't. I think they said that when they screened it for critics, they told the critics not to talk about the actual plot of the movie when you went in, because think about it, they killed off their lead 48 minutes into the movie.
Nobody did that. Like you watch Psycho. I guess we can go full spoilers with all these movies, right? They're like 60 years old.
Yeah. And even if you've not seen Psycho, you should know the twists.
Yeah, you should know the twist because every other movie since then has done the same twist. But Psycho did it first. Like every other movie since then has tried to be Psycho. But you watch Psycho and you're like, okay, this is what the movie about. It's about this girl who nicks $40,000 from her employer and goes on the run. And then she's like, you know what? I really got to head back home and get this together. And she's got her issues with her boyfriend and all this sort of stuff. Then all of a sudden, knifed in the shower. And you're like, whoa, what is going on?
Yeah,
and then suddenly it becomes a murder mystery, and you're like, what? Yeah.
But it does such a good job. Like, even if you know what's happening, it does such a good job at setting up this first story. Like, it sets up everything. So, like, obviously Norman Bates, he seems like a bit of a off-kilter dude. He doesn't seem that bad though, and it sets up everything with his mother so well. And even like before she gets in the shower, there's a scene of Norman Bates going into the motel and just sitting down at a table, and that's supposedly is his alibi. The audience saw him sit there, and then she gets in the shower. Oh, so that's where Norman Bates is. Like, it's like he's subliminally playing with the audience about just everything about Psycho. It just really messes with your head in a really good way.
My friend Christian, who I bring up all the time on the show, he did not know. The only thing he knew about Psycho was the shower scene and Alfred Hitchcock. He didn't know the twist at the end, which I knew. I knew that Norman Bates was his mother. But still, even when you watch it, the way they set it up so gracefully, he really milks every second leading up to that twist. Like, he's like, she walks into the parlor, she closes the door, and everybody and they keep cutting back to the conversation between I forgot the boyfriend's name. Sam, is it? Between Sam and Norman, and you're just like, man, and then next day Sam gets knocked out, and man, and then the body turns around, and it's like this, and it's the decomposing corpse of Norman's mother, and Christian just went, whoa. And I was just like, right?
He comes in and he's got like the mom's dress on, and he's doing that woman scream.
Yeah. And Christian just went, because he was so confused when she died. He's like, wait a minute, but how the mom? And I was like, dog, don't worry about it. And then when it all got explained, he was like, oh, I get it now. He was so like just surprised and taken aback by it. Yeah, he loved the movie, but so it's great how Hitchcock presents that. Yeah,
but it's really well set up because there's Mrs. Crane, or like Crane, is obviously it's named after a bird, and they're meant to be very protective over. They're meant to be strange like mothers and stuff. And I think my favorite scene in Psycho is when they're talking to each other before she gets killed. And they're talking about taxidermy and birds, and how in almost every shot with Norman Bates is just like a huge bird just looming over him, just this huge shadow that he just can't escape from. And when Norman Bates discovers her in the shower and then reels backwards and goes into the corridor, and right next to him is a picture of a bird, it's just sort of like subliminal, but it's not over the top or anything. It's not, this is symbolism. It's nothing like that.
I am Jesus. I
am a bird mother. I am a mother. So nothing like that.
Yeah, they do it's like when you watch like an Edgar Wright movie and you realize how he's told you the whole movie, like as the movie's kind of like going on, like he tells you everything that's going on without you ever knowing it. And like a movie like kind of like Inception or The Prestige, it all kind of stems from Hitchcock, because Hitchcock did it back in the 60s. He kind of showed you, he's like, he really showed you this is exactly what's going on without ever telling you what was actually going on. You know, because you see the mother's body in the window, and you see him carry, and like, you know, that's when I think, you know, I told Christian, I said, what if the mom might be dead? And he's like, no, the mom's not dead. And he's like, what makes you say that? And he's like, well, we just saw him carry the body down to the cellar. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. And so he didn't know. He was convinced that like the mom was in on it when the mom was the one actually killing people. And plus whenever
we're hearing the mother's voice too.
Exactly.
We're not hearing Norman Bates' voice. We're hearing the mother's voice. Yeah.
When you hear the cop,
the mother has a motive.
Like when the cop gives him a blanket, and he's just like, and you hear the mom's voice, and it's like, "Thank you very much." I'm like, "Oh, that's so creepy. Oh, that's so gross." Because you know it's actually Norman Bates.
But a big reason as to why Hitchcock was the master of suspense as well was he built suspense not so much by what he did show, but what he didn't show as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like in that shower scene, it's one of the most brutal stabbing scenes. But if you watch it, you never actually see her getting stabbed. You never
the knife never hits her
the knife going into her. You see, I think there's one shot where it's kind of going towards her, but you never see it pierce her skin.
It kind of like scrapes her. It scrapes her stomach. Yeah.
And that's how he got around the censors. He's like, no, it's an optical illusion. You never actually saw anything. You know?
Yeah. Well, it's like that scene when he pushed the guy down the stairs, and like, you know, and the camera pans up and you see the knife, and then the camera stays there as the knife goes down, and you hear him getting stabbed, but they never actually show the person actually getting stabbed, which shows really how you can make an effective movie without ever having a lot of blood. There's not a lot of blood in the film. It was all chocolate syrup, actually. I think that's
it showed. Yeah, it showed up better in black and white. Which he used because he wanted to keep the budget under $1 million because black and white film was cheaper than regular film.
Yeah. But that movie almost never got made too, Hitchcock. Everyone was trying to shut him down with that movie. Censors trying to shut him down. You know, the movie studios didn't like the idea. They didn't think it would make money. So he basically put his whole reputation on the line to make that movie. And thank God he did, because it's bloody awesome, mate.
He mortgaged his house. He was all of this shambolic stuff that was it was in the Anthony Hopkins movie Hitchcock from a few years ago.
He was literally banking on it, as in he would have gone bankrupt if it didn't make money. There's a great scene in that Anthony Hopkins biopic where Alfred Hitchcock, he's out in the foyer when the movie's being shown in the shower scene. And it's like, he's listening because he knows, like, he can hear the shower running and it's leading up to that scene. Then you hear the shower curtain rip apart and that, come in and everyone's going, oh. And Anthony Hopkins in the foyer is like going, yeah, like stabbing at the air.
Yeah.
And he turns around and there's just like, one of the employees is just staring at him weirdly. He's like, excuse me.
Which apparently never happened, but it's a great embellishment for the movie.
Oh, that never happened? Oh, who cares? It's still good.
I know, who cares? It's just a movie. But one random thing about the movie is that this was in 1960, and for some reason, no idea why, need to do research, toilets were not allowed to be shown on screen.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then when the scene where she throws the evidence into the toilet and flushes it, that was considered like shocking. Like in 1960s, which is insane to me.
It just goes to show like what a nightmare getting that movie made must have been. If they have a problem with you showing a toilet, then how did he get away with any of the other stuff? There was actually a trick he did with one of the censors where he finally called his bluff. He's like, the censor's like, oh no, at the start it's a sex scene and they're in their underwear. He's like, it's not a sex scene, it's after sex. We come in at the end when they're done. And basically, the way he got around it is he's like, I'll tell you what. Very good, Trey.
Thank you.
But yeah, he said to the censor, he's like, well, I'll tell you what. You come in and you can direct it exactly as you want. And of course, the guy never showed up. And he's like, great, so I'll just do it the way I want to do it.
Yeah. Okay. That's psycho. All right,
and one final thing is to talk about for the marketing and how it gave absolutely nothing away. Like, there's one poster where it's just Alfred Hitchcock just pointing at his watch, saying that like if you're late, you're not allowed to see the movie. There's like a no late admittance system, it's required that you see Psycho from the beginning, is what the poster said or something. I just think like. Imagine Christopher Nolan for the putting himself on the poster for Inception, saying it's very complicated. Pay attention.
Yeah,
like he just like it's just him spinning a top on his hand, like yo, get this when you see the movie.
Yeah, that's right. He gave all these instructions that once the film starts, the doors will be locked and nobody will get admittance after that point. So everyone's like,
well, they did that with Saving Private Ryan, right? Like Spielberg said to have the theaters close the doors and lock them once the Normandy thing started to move at the start, because he didn't want people missing anything. I think Spielberg did that same thing later on in the 30 years later.
It's kind of the same logic as like, a friend of mine, he put a fridge out on the front nature strip, and he's like put a sign on it saying, "Fridge works, free, take it." Nobody took it. So, like, after about a week, he's like, fine. He took that away and he put up a sign that said for sale, and then somebody stole it. That's how he got rid of it.
That's the best.
So that's a bit like that with Psycho. It's like, if you're late, you will not get in. Then people will like, well, now I want to get in. Whereas if they're like, please see the movie, they're like, nah, I don't want to.
Yeah. But now if you're just like, oh, you're not going to let me see it? Oh, no, I have to come in
now and see it.
Now I want
to see it.
Because people are fickle like that. Like, Hitchcock bought the rights to, because this is based off a book, and what he did was that he got his assistant Peggy Robertson to go around all of Hollywood and just buy every single copy of the book so that no one could read it. Because then they'd say Hitchcock is making a movie based off of this book, and then people would go and buy the book, but they couldn't find it anywhere because his assistant had bought all of the copies.
Wow. I bet the author didn't like that.
That is committed.
Hey, they still bought them.
Yeah,
they still
got
money, I guess. Yeah.
Yep.
People
I bet you once the movie came out
today because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Cinefix is a great. They have a great series called "What's the Difference," and they talked about introducing kind of the book and the film, and how apparently in the book Norman's a lot more. He's a bit more pudgy. He's kind of creepy in how he talks. He's a creepy old pudgy guy. But in the movie, he's kind of the sleeker, still kind of creepy, but more is kind of on the spectrum, if you will, kind of guy. Of where you're like, yeah, you look like you don't get out much, but I could still sit down and have a conversation with you. But it is crazy how he always turns on a dime when they mention the mother. Like every time it's just like, well, can I go speak to mother? No, you can't go speak to her. Like he goes from being this really kind of kind and sweet man to being this like vile and just ravaged, just disgusting guy whenever they bring up the mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
a boy's best friend is his mother.
Never even had a fly.
But another thing that Hitchcock did to build up the suspense is something he'd do where he'd say, you show the audience the knife, but you don't show the character the knife. Or not a knife, just whatever it is. If a character is walking through a house and he's looking for someone and the person appears behind them, you show the audience the person appearing behind them, but the character doesn't know they've appeared behind them. So it's like the audience is like, look behind you! He's behind you!
Yeah, James Wan is great at doing that. Like all his horror films, they'll always have the scene of like they're walking through a house and like you'll see a ghost walk through the corridor, and then they'll walk that corridor and the ghost will be gone, and the ghost will be back behind him, and just building and building and building tension. Yeah, James Wan's great at that. I remember we were watching the movie and the girl's showering and we're just sitting there and like the music, and there's no music, I don't think. It's just the sound of the shower, and then like you see from inside the shower curtain the door open,
and the silhouette and then someone comes in,
and
she's got her back to the door so she can't see it, but you can see it.
And Christian turned to me and he said, "That's horrifying." I'm like, "Isn't it?" He was like, that's legitimately freaked him out. So now when I shower tonight, I'm gonna lock my door. I feel like that's why people check behind the shower curtain now for some reason, because of Psycho. I'm just like ruined showers for people. Yeah.
So Hitchcock did I can't remember if it was an interview or he did a lecture or something, just talking about how to do suspense, and he used the example of a bomb underneath the table.
The element of suspense is giving an audience information. Now, you and I are sitting here. Suddenly a bomb goes off. Up we go, blown to smithereens. What have the audience had watching this scene? 5 or 10 seconds of shock. Now, we do the scene over again. But we tell the audience there's a bomb underneath this table and it's going to go off in 5 minutes. Now, this innocuous conversation about football becomes very potent. They say, don't talk about football, there's a bomb under there. That's what they want to tell us. Then their anxieties will be as long as that clock ticks away. But the bomb must never go off.
Yeah. And then that's suspense.
That's suspense, yes. Yes.
Well, it's always a matter of like suspense is
that is
waiting
frontier
for something
justice.
to happen. That is frontier justice. Suspense is all about waiting to see what's going to happen, and I think that's kind of like what makes the best horror films are those that are very suspenseful. The reason that I think Halloween is such a scary film is because Michael Myers is just kind of waiting there. He's just kind of standing there sometimes waiting, and you're the audience waiting to see what's going to happen. When Jamie Lee Curtis thinks that she's free of Michael Myers, and then he rises up out of the closet. That scene is horrifying because you realize now that it's not over, and you're just like, stop it. Anyways, you were saying something, Ben, and I interrupted you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's like like if as well, like yeah, not many of Alfred Hitchcock's movies have been remaked, but one of the worst remakes of all time is when they did try to remake Psycho, and they made Vince Vaughn Norman Bates. If you ever want to see something that just completely butchers a timeless classic, it's got to be that. And like
the thing, they recreated it like shot for shot. So it's like, what's the point?
Well, they did add in stuff that totally ruins everything. Like we mentioned before, like Hitchcock, he builds a suspense by suggesting things rather than showing them directly. And there is a bit where, like, in the actual like original Psycho, and I hate that I have to classify original Psycho now, is like he puts her in room number 1, so it's right next to the office, and then he opens up a peephole and like looks at her as she's getting undressed, and he's just looking. Yeah. But in the remake, Vince Vaughn starts masturbating.
Oh, God.
And the camera's just focused on Vince Vaughn's. Oh, God, don't do that. You can hear it. You can hear that, too. You hear those sounds. And it's just focused on Vince Vaughn's face from beginning to end until he's finished. And you're like, no, that's not what he does.
I don't know why I just...
It's implied.
I don't know why I just had this...
Thing.
I just had this random thought, like, if for some reason they remade the remake of Psycho or something, Tom Hiddleston as Norman Bates.
I'm actually okay with that.
Actually,
I'm honestly okay with that.
Because he's got to look approachable, he's got to look normal, and then it's when the mother gets brought up that he starts to unwind.
He's got to look good in a dress.
It's why the twist works so well, because Norman Bates seems like obviously off kilter, but still a reasonable person who wouldn't have the motive to stab somebody. Whereas the mother,
you're willing to eat a sandwich with a guy is what you're trying to get at. Like, hey,
exactly,
eat
like a bird.
He was non-threatening enough that she was willing to have eat a sandwich with him, because he's like a little kind of skinny guy. Just seems like a nice kind of shy dude.
Yeah.
Little do we know he's a total psycho.
Yeah, it's a little do we know
that. Title.
By that point, mother's taken over. Yeah. So, oh man,
the dominant personality wins. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy when they had that scene, like, you know, you have the great reveal scene of where, you know, I forgot the actor's name that plays Norman Bates, but he has that great kind of face of where he's, you know, when he's getting captured, he's making those weird expressions with his face, and then he drops the knife and it's all revealed, and then it cuts to the detective or the psychiatrist kind of just breaking down everything that just happened and how it's happened, and you're just like, man, and it's a great way to end that movie because it's not necessarily. It's kind of a happy ending in how the guy's been caught, but you're just left so unsettled. You have no idea,
it's not so much that he's been caught; it's the fact that someone like this actually exists.
Yeah, it's awful.
Okay, should we talk about North by Northwest? Because you and I, Trilbee, we both saw that.
All right.
Yeah, I'd actually not seen this all the way through until earlier today. And there's so much in it that it's just been taken from. It is the definitive like mistaken identity story.
Yeah, look, I'd say for our listeners, it's not as good as Psycho. If you haven't seen any Alfred Hitchcock movies, see Psycho. That's the one you want to see.
Yeah, and for North by Northwest, don't watch it and like be on your phone and tweet about. You've got to pay attention. there's a lot happening, or maybe I'm just a dumb, filthy casual. That could very well.
Even stuff where you're just like, oh, this is boring. It comes around later, and you're like, oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah, basically, Cary Grant, who's sort of like Tom Hanks is now, as he's great at playing the everyman. Yeah. He's an advertising executive, and then he gets kidnapped out of nowhere, and everyone keeps calling him George Kaplan. And he gets embroiled in this huge conspiracy, and he has to go across the country to try and prove his name. And it's actually, I really enjoyed it a lot. I think it was a bit long, and everything involving the supposed romance between him and Eve. I just didn't believe it, just wasn't into it. Although I do love that. I think this was the movie that had the cliche. Oh, they're making love on a train, then the train goes into a tunnel.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's
the last shot of the film.
Yeah.
Really?
It's the last shot of the film.
Wow.
It's wonderful.
Is that like the James Bond? Wow. I guess Christmas came twice this year. Like that's like from James Bond and from the Pierce Brosnan movies. Just like that really cheesy way to end the movie.
It is cheesy, yeah. But I think what makes North by Northwest work as well as it does is how the main character is written. Because he's sort of meant to be an everyman who's been embroiled in this huge conspiracy, but he's an incredibly sharp guy. He's really witty. He's really clever. He seems to have like a really witty response to everything that's said to him. Like he's trying to board a train, and he's got sunglasses on, and the ticket seller's like, "Is something wrong with your eyes?" And he says, "Yes, they're sensitive to questions."
That was a good line.
I'm going to use that. I'm going
to Yes, they're sensitive to excessive questions. Yeah, but it's actually. It's a good movie because it's one of those ones that puts you in that guy's position, because you're like, yeah, that could happen to me, because he's meeting the way it all goes down at the start is he's meeting some business associates in a hotel bar, and it's the same hotel where a spy is staying, in air quotes, staying, and like, I got the impression that when he calls the waiter over, because you know how spies have certain signals in public, like if I call the waiter in a certain way, that's how you'll know I'm me, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And he calls the waiter in a certain way, and by accident, he does the same thing. So these people who are there trying to catch the spy are like, ooh, that's the guy there. So it was just unlucky that he happened to do it. And then next thing you know, he's got a gun pointed at his chest, and they're like, come along, sir. No need to mess up that suit. And he's like, what?
It's Cars 2. It's a plot of Cars 2. That's exactly what Cars 2 is.
It was probably a parody of that,
Yeah. And he's so like nonchalant about the whole. He's been kidnapped. He's in the back of a car, and he's just chatting to these people. He's just talking. He's really just messing with them because he is the smartest guy in the room most of the time.
Yeah.
And he's been kidnapped. He's in this unknown place surrounded by complete strangers. And it's like, well, not that I mind a slight case of abduction now and then, but I've got tickets for the theatre this evening to a show I was really looking forward to. He's not a parody. That's what's kind of amazing, and how Cary Grant sort of toes that line so well. He's not a parody, but he is really sharp, and he is very clever. He does do some very clever things to evade detection. Like he pretends to be a ticket inspector, and when he gets off a train, somebody who helps out on a train, and then he goes to their shower room to shave, like in the mirror, to blend in with everybody else. He's a smart guy. And you kind of want to root for him. You want him to find out what's happening, and he's really endearing and really enjoyable to watch.
Yeah. I did think, though, when he's getting kidnapped, I'm like, because Cary Grant's a tall guy, and there's these two guys much smaller than him, and only one of them has a gun. I'm like, wouldn't he just sock that guy in the jaw and then run around the corner?
That's your Australian coming out, Bandit. It was That's your inner Australian nation.
Well, he punches a guy in the face later. It's like, that's another way. Like the bad guys are waiting to kill him, but he's in the middle of an auction, and he knows as soon as he tries to leave, they're going to go and grab him, and they can't grab him in a public place. So he starts being an obnoxious jerk and like disrupting the auction so that they'll call the cops, and then he punches someone there so the cops will come and take him out, and he's like, thank you saved my life, guys. So if he's willing to sock just some regular guy, he should be able to like sock a dude with a gun, I guess. But I did think it's funny because after they kidnap him and they take him to the house, and he's like, well, Mr. Campbell, you're taller than I expected. And he's like, my name is not Mr. Campbell. And he's like, you can stop with the act now, Mr. Campbell. And he's like, really? I'm not Mr. Campbell. I'd be like, dude, if they realize they picked up the wrong guy, they're probably just going to kill you right here. Just pretend like you are Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Then I'm just going to be like, oh, you're not the spy that we thought? This giant super spy organization? I mean, we're definitely just going to let you go now. We're definitely not going to kill you and dump you in that same swamp. Yeah. I'd be like, yes, I am Mr. Campbell. Yes. What about me? Yeah.
But there's another... but it's actually really quite an intricate kind of spy story, which is like what you said, Trilbee. You do have to pay attention to what's happening throughout it. Like he meets that girl on a train, and that's when I was like, ugh, why did they shoehorn like a romance into this? It feels like the story just takes like a massive detour for a long time, but no, it comes back in later, and there's another twist later on, which is something that they planned ahead of time that they don't tell you in the movie is going to happen. So when it happens, you're like, oh, you ruined everything. And then you're like, oh. So yeah, it's pretty good. Mind you, trying to murder someone with a crop duster in the middle of a field is pretty dumb.
No, but it's for a great shot. I'll give you that.
It's such a great scene, though. Everything's set up so well because he's been told, okay, you're meeting this person at this bus stop, and then he's there. He's stood there for minutes because waiting for cars are going by. Is that the person I'm waiting for? No.
And there's somebody... a fake out where a car comes up and drops one guy, and they're just kind of looking at each other across the road. And the way it's framed with the road and either of them on either side, you're like, oh, that's Mr. Campbell. And he goes over and he's like, are you waiting for someone here? And he's like,
the bus.
Nah, just waiting for the bus. He's like, oh.
but what happened? Because the scene opens with him getting dropped off at this road, and then you see just like a crop duster over that gets like nearby.
Yeah.
A plane and then the guy at the who's waiting for the bus, he's like, that's funny. That plane's dusting crops where there ain't no crops.
And then he gets on the bus,
once
and
the guy
like,
gets off,
what?
Yep.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, it's so that's basically it. It's just so well set up, and then he's running away from the plane, and then the plane crashes into a tanker in a massive explosion, and this film's got everything. I think you're right when it comes to this like romance when they get on the train, and the plot just stops for a good half an hour, and these two are they're just making googly eyes at each other for about 20 minutes.
Yeah, it goes on for way too long.
It goes on for way too long, and because as soon as she showed up, I was just thinking, "Oh God, here comes the blonde! Here comes the blonde in the Hitchcock film."
She sticks out like a sore thumb because everyone's just kind of like regular people. Because I mean, now like in movies, everybody looks like supermodels, but back then, people just look like regular people, And then she comes around the corner of the carriage, and she's like all, dolled up and everything, and you're like, "Oh, here's the Hitchcock girl." There's always got to be one.
Yeah,
what would you give?
Everything they say to each other is flirtatious. Yeah. Every line of dialogue is just pure flirting.
But you realize, like she's way too flirty, and you're like, real women wouldn't be like that. It turns out, no, she's on a mission.
Least not
she wants
with me.
To seduce him.
Yeah. But and I think, the final sequence on Mount Rushmore is like it has become iconic. It is the definitive cross country thriller chase movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's really enjoyable, and I even like Hitchcock's cameo at the very beginning of the movie where it's it's a shot of like a crowded New York street or something. It says directed by Alfred Hitchcock, and then people start getting on a bus. And then the door closes. Hitchcock tries to get on the bus, and then it just drives off.
Yeah, actually,
that's his cameo.
Hitchcock did the Stan Lee cameo before Stan Lee. He does that in a lot of his movies. He shows up in it.
Is he now? I have a question now. Is he in Psycho? Because I thought I saw him when they're like right before they enter. That guy enters the shop to give him the $40,000. There's a guy standing out there that looks just like Alfred Hitchcock, just standing there. Was that Hitchcock? I'm not sure if that was Hitchcock or not.
Okay, I've just Googled it. It takes place 6 minutes into the film as Janet Leigh returns to the office after her lunchtime. Hitchcock is stood outside wearing a cowboy hat.
Yeah,
that's exactly. Yeah, I'm like, oh hey, that's Alfred Hitchcock. Yeah.
In North by Northwest, people are wondering whether or not he appears again. Like 44 minutes into the movie, apparently he's in drag. But that's not. They speculate about it. So if he is cameoing in the movie, he probably want you to know about it.
Well, if Alfred Hitchcock is in drag and he's talking about his mother, just walk the other direction as fast as you can.
But he wouldn't even hurt a fly.
Yeah, you just see a fly buzzing by. Just like, I should probably go. It's like, no, come by for. Let's go. Look at that bird. You know what? I'm okay. I'm gonna go.
But yeah, it's interesting because like North by Northwest as like spy sort of thriller. Like a lot of Alfred Hitchcock's movies, when you look at them now, you're like, oh, they're so cliched. They've got all these cliches, but it's like, no, the cliches come from those. Like with North by Northwest, like a lot of the beats and the way the sort of story unfolds, you're like, it's a lot like other spy stuff. But no, that's why he was the first. He was the trailblazer of his time.
Yeah. Well, so I would ask you if you guys do you have any more things on thoughts on North by Northwest? This is a great conversation to listen to. I'm actually really intrigued to see the movie. What would you give it out of 10, Bandit?
by modern standards, I'd actually have to give it like a 7 out of 10, maybe a 6 out of 10 by modern standards. And that's just because this was back in the time when movies could take their time a bit more. Like, there's like 10 minutes of credits at the beginning, because for some reason they always put the credits at the beginning of the movie back then, and they go for
but that
ages.
That music, it is.
That's true. Yeah.
If you've watched the Family Guy episode, it's the first episode when they had their comeback and they fight on Mount Rushmore, and there's a tape like Passion of the Christ 2.
With Mel Gibson.
That is basically that entire episode is North by Northwest.
That's where I got it from. The whole thing's like, "You crazy, Jesus! You crazy!" Yeah, I love that.
That's what my ex-wife used to say.
Actually, I did like that line though when he's like. He and the girl, they're like climbing Mount Rushmore and they're hanging off the edge of this cliff. And she's like, "You said you've been married twice before. Whatever happened?" And he goes, "Oh, they said I lived too boring a life." And he's climbing a cliff and he's shooting at them.
Oh, okay. So, and then Trilbee, what would you give it out of 10? North by Northwest.
I feel terrible saying this, but because it's like. It's from the late 50s, and it's like part of the National Film Registry. It's meant to be one of the greatest movies of all time. Perfect. I wouldn't go that far. 4 out of 10. Too much water. From IGN. But for North by Northwest, I'd probably give it maybe an 8. Like the sequence on the train when they're just making googly eyes at each other goes on for way too long. I think the movie is a bit too long. But it is still really. You appreciate it an awful lot because it's very ambitious. It's huge in scope. They're traveling like all the way across America. It is very ambitious. It's a marvel of production. I just think it's a little bit too long, but once again, like Bandit's right, it's by modern standards, and from the 50s, it is just an absolute. It's probably the blockbuster of its day, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We didn't rate Psycho. Sorry, go ahead.
The reason. I think probably the reason those romance scenes go too long is because Alfred Hitchcock was behind the camera going, "Let's do it again."
Yep.
Which I'll go into all that when we talk about the birds, because that's really where his creepy obsession took hold.
What would you guys rate Psycho?
I'd give it a 10 out of 10, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm going for 10, and it's not.
I'll go 9.
It's not just the fact that it is like a very it's a landmark movie, very iconic. It does hold up. It's really smartly told. It is a very good film.
I'll go 9, just because as someone who saw, I guess, the second half of the movie for the first time this morning, in terms of how it holds up, the actual storyline and suspense itself, yes, holds up. Some of the filmmaking aspects feels a little off sometimes. Like they'll have the shot of the. They'll have a shot of the money in her bed and then pan up to her suitcase or something. Just, minor things like that. But then they'll have like a scene where a guy falls down the stairs. And granted, it looks really dated because you can't actually shoot a guy falling down the stairs like that, I guess, in the 60s, which you can. But, but at the same time, it still looks dated in the same way that CG from back in the 90s looks dated because they couldn't do it that well back then. So, you take with what you can get. But it's still a fantastic film. I'd give Psycho a 9. But do you want to talk about the birds, Bandit?
Yes. Well, here's the thing with the birds, because he also has a thing with birds, because birds are in Psycho and all the rest of it. And the crop duster attack is a little bit similar to like a lot of the birds attacks. Here's the thing with the birds. First of all, I'll just talk about the movie. It's follows a little bit of the same kind of structure as Psycho, is that it starts off one thing and you think it's going to be about that, and then it takes a turn. And with the birds, it starts off, there's this rich chick who's the Hitchcock blonde, of course, and she kind of falls in love with this guy Mitch, and they've got this. He sort of plays a prank on her in a store where like he knows she doesn't work there, but he pretends like he thinks she does. So he's like, "Hey, can you tell me about which birds are good and all that?" So he knows she's not really working there, but he's sort of leading her along the path. He's like, "Oh, could you get me that bird?" And she tries to get it, and it bites her and runs out and all this. And so basically then she decides she's going to show up at his house with a cage of lovebirds to sort of get back at him. So throughout this, like the first 20, 30 minutes, you think it's just going to be this sort of love story between these two. And of course, this guy has an overbearing mother and a possessive mother. Again, Hitchcock. And but then out of nowhere, this freak of nature happened, and birds just flock and just attack people and just lay siege to this whole town. And it's like this movie, like it's good, like it pioneered special effects in many ways, because there's a mixture of like what's the word, where they photo print it in or something. What's the word?
Photoshop?
No.
Photoshop? What do you mean? What describe it?
Oh, like well, I mean, now we call it green screening, but they didn't have green screen then. Where they, what do they call it? Where they, whatever it is, but whatever that was, they,
because it's a big yellow screen, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah, well, it had some good stuff with that, but yeah.
It's called sodium vapor process.
Yeah.
that was the 60s sexy name for it.
Sodium vapor process, yes.
I'm going to look that up while you guys are talking, because this is going to bother me now. So
have the safe search up, because it's a very sexy topic.
Yeah, that's the forerunner of of green screen, I guess, where they digitally insert stuff into movies later on that actually isn't there. But I mean, this movie, it's supposed to be like, originally an early draft of the script was this small town she goes to. The birds attacking this town was going to be some kind of like. It was going to be suggested there's some kind of curse or some kind of plague or something, that something evil has happened to this town and that's why the birds are attacking it. But they sort of remove that from the story later on, which results in this weird sort of scene. Like after the birds, there's been a few incidents where birds have attacked people, then a big incident where they've attacked a school and all these school children. And the main character, the blonde, she's sort of like in this diner, and she's like trying to like call her father, runs a newspaper, and tell him what's happening. And people in the diner are like, it's the end times, it's in the Bible. Another one's like, nonsense, and all this sort of stuff. And that's sort of a leftover scene from the early version of the script, where it was going to be some curse or something on the town. Because there's this weird bit where this old lady's like, you brought the birds here. You! Who are you? What are you? And then she gets slapped in the face, which is pretty funny. But so there's like a weird bit like that.
Striker. Sorry. I'm thinking of it.
But the thing to remember with the birds is, this is when Alfred Hitchcock, creepy obsession with his leading ladies, crossed the line. Because he always had a reputation behind the camera that he'd love his leading ladies, right? Like, he had a reputation of being like really controlling, really possessive, and make unusual demands of you. And like the woman from Psycho, who played the main thing in Psycho, she said that well, I never experienced that. She said, I knew he had that reputation, but with me, I never experienced that. But a lot of people said that actress at the time, she was already a very well established star, so he would have behaved himself around her. In The Birds, however, the blonde woman who's in that, she was a nobody. Basically, that was
Tippi
Hedren. Sorry, say again.
Tippi Hedren. That's her name.
Tippi Hedren. That's
to behead her. To behead her. Oh, Hedren. Right.
Yeah, she
Tippi
probably
Hedren.
wanted to behead him. I'll tell you that. But but she was like a breakout star, so she pretty much had like no capital in the business. And his creepy obsession went way overboard with her. And he basically tried to make her have sex with him. And he said,
what?
Like, towards the end of the movie, he's like trying to make her have sex with him, and she's like, no. And he's like, well, if you don't, then I can make sure you never work in this business again. And she didn't, he made sure that she never worked in this business again.
Oh my god!
And the actress, sorry, go ahead, Trilbee.
Because Tippi was like, Hitchcock first saw her doing like a soda commercial or something, and said, I want her to be the next Grace Kelly. And during the promoting for the birds, he would
because she was good.
She could have been. He kept on comparing her to Grace Kelly, saying she's smarter than Grace Kelly, she's sexier than Grace Kelly, and things like that. And the moment, apparently, it started off really well between those two, but the moment that really crossed the line, I say kind of, absolutely crossed the line, was there's a scene in The Birds where Tippi Hedren has to go upstairs to the attic, and when she asked Hitchcock, why? What's a motivation for going up there? And he said, because I told you to. and that's basically the reason.
Why would my character walk into a room that she knows is filled with killer birds? And he says, because I want you to. And sorry, then go on, Trilbee.
And she was told that the crew are going to be using mechanical or puppet birds or whatever, but she goes through the wooden door, and then what would happen is that for like 5 days the crew would just throw birds, gulls, ravens, crows at her.
Live ones.
Just for live ones for 5 days. And their beaks were clamped shut with elastic bands, but they were still able to like peck, and like at one point they nearly gouged her eye out, and like they hit her cheek and nearly got her eye, and then she would just be crying on set.
That's for all the shots of like when the swarm is going around. There's lots of close-ups where she's like, ah, and birds are like coming at her. And that's because, they threw birds at her for 5 days. And Hitchcock said he wanted that scene to feel like a rape. And it basically kind of like was a rape in real life when
Good
they
Lord.
filmed it.
That's some Zack Snyder talk right there. That's, oh my God, that's awful.
Let's just throw birds at Batman. There's a great, there's a really good TV movie called The Girl, which is it's got Toby Jones as Alfred Hitchcock, and it is basically like how the Anthony Hopkins movie was about Psycho. This movie is about the birds and Hitchcock's relationship with Tippi Hedren and how creepy it is. And Toby Jones doesn't look as much like Hitchcock as Hopkins did in all that makeup, but I think he embodied the creepiness even more. And they recreate that scene where where the crew are just throwing all of the birds at her for days and days and days. It's just 5 solid days of just people throwing live birds at her. Yeah. And it's such a harrowing scene, and Toby Jones is just glaring at her as it's happening, like almost seemingly getting off on it because this mad power trip that he had.
Yeah. And Jennifer Lawrence wants to complain when they tell her to lose weight to play a starving person. Good Lord.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Or wear blue.
I'm off Jennifer Lawrence.
Or wear. They don't want to. She doesn't want to wear some blue makeup. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Where?
Yeah, and in the next film that they did, Marnie, which I love the poster for Marnie. Alfred Hitchcock's suspenseful sex mystery. That's basically what the poster says. That was when they started he was getting even creepier, and just because it was like a sexual romance movie, and that really just. Hitchcock kind of basically took that as, you're in a sex movie with me, and I'm directing. That means I can do whatever I want. And then, the rest is history, depressingly.
And it's also because, like Birds, that was his next movie after Psycho, so he was, the top dog in Hollywood at the time. And Tippi Hedren has said since then, she tells all the stories about it. I highly recommend you check out some of her interviews. They're messed up, some of the stuff she went through. But she said, if that happened to me today, she said, I'd be a rich woman because today you can sue. You've got agents that look out for you. You've got, different actors unions and all sorts of stuff. Back then there was none of that. And Alfred Hitchcock kind of I don't know exactly what the details were, but he was kind of like her agent as well. Because after he said, you're not going to sleep with me, I'm going to destroy your career. After that, lots and lots of people wanted to cast her in different stuff, but they would have to call Alfred Hitchcock first, and of course he would always just say, "Oh, she's unavailable. She's unavailable. She's unavailable." So she never worked again. Poor old Tippi Hedren. Mm-hmm. So he's a great director, but a real crazy weirdo. I
mean, a lot of the greatest directors have had something awful with women. I don't know what it is. Like you watch what's his name? Bloody American Hustle guy. I'm forgetting his name. David O. Russell. Thank God. David O. Russell. Apparently he tried to fight. I don't know who it was on the set of one of his films, but and apparently he's awful to a lot of his actors and actresses especially. And so I don't know what it is. Kubrick, infamously, what he did to Shelley Duvall on the set of The Shining is just awful, and so it's a reason that she kind of is the way she is now. I would suppose, and the way she is in that film is kind of reflected to how they ended up making it. So it's not surprising to me that some of the most creative auteurs out there they have one thing about them that makes them a little off and makes them, I guess, the auteurs that they are. Here's hoping that I'm going to be a normal filmmaker. I really hope Nolan doesn't
no, it's a done deal. You're going to be a creep.
All right, fair enough. I really hope Nolan doesn't have a thing. I hope Nolan's just because apparently Nolan is not Like creep. I hope Nolan's just like a quiet guy. He doesn't like try to rape his actresses on set because he's married with a wife. So
what I can tell about Christopher Nolan, with Christopher Nolan, his approach to romance in his movies, I think he's asexual. Like he's got sex never crosses his mind.
Yeah, he's got 2 kids.
you can do that like
they just
through
popped
insemination.
off his. Yeah.
I think Alfred Hitchcock.
It's like that scene. It's like that scene in
Christopher Nolan does.
It's like that scene. What is that show? It's not Penny Dreadful. It's the other one. That other weird kind of British show. I think it's on HBO. I forgot what it's called. There's a scene with a robot in that show that reminds you of Christopher Nolan. Yeah, because if you watch like Christopher Nolan interviews, like he'll just be like, so what? The person like, so what was it like to be this kind of family emotional story? And he'll just go, it was all about trying to create a new level of emotion for how far the family can be. And it's just this quiet, just the way they say we could plan it, British robot man. It's like the vision without any personality.
Well, his brother's got a lot more personality.
Yeah, Johnny Nolan. Yeah,
yeah. But getting back to the birds is like so yeah, when you watch the birds. Like it's got that sort of suspense growing of like as you're watching this story start to unfold, you're like, oh, it's his quirky romance, blah blah blah, and then like she's paddling a boat in to meet him, and then a gull will just swoop at her head. She'll be like, ah, and like then later on, like she'll be at the guy's house, and the kids will be out playing, and gulls will just like start swooping them and all this stuff, and then they'll get inside the house and they'll be like, man, that was weird, and then thousands of sparrows just pour in down the chimney and just swoop in. And there's one scene later on where Tina Headley, is that what was her name? Trilbee?
Tippi Hedren.
Tippi Hedren.
Tippi Hedren. Such a weird name. There's a scene later on where after the sparrows attack in the house, the possessive mother is like, oh, I'm so worried about my daughter at school. Can you go get her? So the blonde's like, yeah, sure, I'll go get her. So she goes to the school, and it's this bit where all the kids are inside this hall, like just before lunchtime at school, and they're all singing this song. And whenever you have small children singing, it's always creepy. And like the main character, she's sitting outside smoking a cigarette because you could smoke on camera back then, and behind her is like play equipment, and she's just sitting there kind of like smoking. And then you see in the background like one crow just flies up and like lands, and she's still smoking. And then it shows inside some of the kids showing, and then it cuts back, and then there's like 5 crows sitting on the branch, and then it cuts away, and then cuts back, and then there's like 20, and then it cuts away, and then cuts back, and the whole playground is just covered in crows. And she will turn around, she sees them all, and she's like, and she like slowly walks into the school, and she goes to the teacher who's like seen the bird attack. She's like, we need to get the kids out of here. But like that's another one of those iconic Hitchcock moments where with all the crows like covering all the play equipment. And
crows are inherently just creepy. Just like even like when like we're flying around and one lands, and you just hear caw caw caw. This is the way they. I hate birds. First of all, anyways. But go ahead, Trilbee. Go ahead.
Especially when the birds attack in this, because they've got all the different sounds from all the different types of birds, because it's all different kinds of birds. It's not just crows. And when they attack, they make some weird noises. So when you hear that, like hundreds of those birds making that sound, it's genuinely creepy. You're like, ew.
I wonder how many of those were just Alfred Hitchcock just breathing into the camera because he saw the carnage of women. Just
throw another bird at her. I said, do it. I made Psycho.
But another example of knowing about certain scenes before you've even seen the movie because of pop culture and references and stuff. That when you were talking about because there's all those birds in the playground. It's I saw it in the Simpsons episode where Maggie, the baby, has to get a pacifier, and she's in the daycare center, and then they just have to slowly walk across a room full of like just babies with their dummies or their pacifiers.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's directly from the birds.
Yeah, there's a couple scenes like that where the birds are all perched, but something will trigger them, and then they just swarm, so they have to like walk really slowly through all of them. Yeah. No, he's a good filmmaker. Terrible person, but a good filmmaker.
Yeah.
And that's the moral of the story, guys. Here, Alfred Hitchcock, terrible person, good filmmaker though, makes great movies.
Well, there is one film I just want to very briefly talk about. I know we had a very nice end to the segment there, but I'm just going to be
I also
British,
want to bring up
and
Rear
it never
Window
ends.
as well, but go ahead.
I was just trying to make a joke. Sorry.
Fair enough. Now you made me feel not as bad. Now there's Rope from 1948, which is one of his. It's before the peak of Hitchcock when he wasn't as big of a name.
Yeah,
but
I think Psycho was 59, so it was before that.
Yeah. Yes, it was really in the late 50s when he became just a huge megastar director. But in 48, we've got Rope, which it's set in one apartment complex in one room basically, where these two teenagers have just killed somebody. They've just strangled somebody with a rope, and they've got a party about to take place in their apartment. So what they do is that they hide the body inside of the apartment. So they put him in a box somewhere, and one of them's just thinking, "Oh, it'll be fun. Let's try and cover it up." And the entire movie is supposedly one shot. Because back in the 40s, film nowadays you could just set a camera to record and there we go for 90 minutes or whatever. But back then you had to use film stock and film reels, and that's a finite resource. You have to change the film after 10 minutes. So every 8 or 9 minutes there would be a moment where the camera would go behind somebody's back or go behind a piece of furniture, and then a new take would play, so it looks like it's one continuous shot. There are a couple of moments where it is just a flat cut, just straight away, because even back then when you're screening movies at 20 minutes, a projectionist would have to change a reel anyway, so during those transitions it's just a flat cut. And you can tell that it's based off of a play, because it's one location, it's very dialogue driven, and it's got James Stewart, who I think is one of the best actors in history. James Stewart is just terrific. He's playing, he's the kind of guy, he's the headmaster of their school, I think, and he's just slightly ahead of the curve to everybody else. He knows something's up, but he doesn't quite know what. And there were so many moments
Bueller? Sorry.
Yeah, he's basically him, but more classy.
Anyone?
And,
anyone?
Because they
want to explain this dead body? Anyone?
I'm sorry I can't come to the chest right now. I've been murdered and stuffed in a box.
They hide the body in a box, and what they put a dinner. They put a cloth on top of it and put all the snacks and the drinks on top of it. So everyone's literally inches away from this body, but they don't know it's there. And then later on, the smell starts happening from the corpse, and it's really, really well done. It's so clever. The two teenagers, it's not explicitly said, but people have theorized that they're both gay. They're a closeted couple, and it's not said in the movie. But when you think about that, it just adds another dynamic to it. It's not one of Hitchcock's best, but it's one of his most inventive, and I think it's one of his shortest. It's 80 minutes long. It's a really short film, and it's really
it sounds really good.
Yeah, I need to check out this movie. This movie sounds. Yeah, I've heard about this a lot, and I've seen a lot about this. I don't know how it ends, so I don't know what happens. That's gonna be cool.
It sounds a bit to me like that old Edgar Allan Poe poem of The Telltale Heart.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's very much like that.
Well, I'd also recommend.
It sounds like the Black Cat as well, where he hit the body in the wall and he kept hearing the cat meow or whatever, and then he realized that the cat was in the wall with it. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
There's a really funny. There's a really funny behind-the-scenes story where they were filming, and it's because film stock is really expensive, so you have to make every single take count when you're making a movie like this in the 40s. And at one point during filming, I don't think it's a take that's in the movie, but at one point a camera operator broke their foot during filming, and it was during a really dramatic moments, they were heavy camera equipment. They broke their foot, and before he could scream, someone gagged him and then just dragged him out the studio so that he wouldn't make a noise.
Wow.
Was it Alfred Hitchcock? Was it a woman? Was it a blonde woman that broke her foot? She's like, "You come with me."
Alfred Hitchcock suddenly puts a knife under his throat, and he's like, "Don't make a sound." He's like, "Why are you wearing a woman's dress?" Then he goes in the box. Like, "Shut up."
What's that bird on your head for? Don't worry about it.
Why are you speaking with a voice like an old lady?
I've got ideas.
Yeah, it's really There is a Hitchcock cameo, even though he's not even he's kind of in the background on a neon sign. It's one of his most obscure cameos. You probably have to Google it because you won't see it first time properly. It's really obscured.
Yeah.
I really
recommend.
recommend.
Check that out. I'd also
watch
sorry,
Lifeboat as well. It's in the same. It's in the same vein as Rope, where it's like in one location. It's just a bunch of terrible people who are stuck on a boat and they decide whether or not to kill each other. It just makes you lose faith in humanity. But anyway,
called Lifeboat.
That's it.
Did you say?
Yes, that means they kill each other.
Yeah.
If
Wow.
you lose faith in mankind, I imagine that they would end up killing each other. But anyways,
now that sounds like Life of Pi, kind of.
It's like Life of Pi, but good.
Yeah.
Oh, whoa! I love that movie. You piece of British.
Yeah, I liked it too. But one last Hitchcock movie I'd like to recommend to our viewers is Rear Window. I'm a big fan of Rear Window. The premise for that story is Cary Grant once again has a blonde girlfriend once again. No possessive mother in this one, which is a nice change. And Cary Grant, he's a photographer. He's got a broken leg because he wanted to get a picture of a race car in the middle of a race. So he stood in the middle of the racetrack to get the picture, and he broke his leg because the car must have hit him. So he's stuck in his apartment, and he's got nothing to do all day but just look out the window, and across the courtyard is the other side of the apartment block, and through the windows he can see everyone else's goings on, because apparently no one draws their blinds in this universe. So, but anyway, he's there with his telescopic camera, and he's basically doing a peeping Tom, watching everyone, and he gets to know everyone's movement. It's like, this woman over here always does this one always does that, and he's basically just watching what's going on. Then suddenly one night he hears a scream. He hears a woman scream, and basically as he watches what happens over the next few days, he pieces together this theory that this guy in the top right window murdered his wife, and like he sees him carrying out big heavy cases and stuff like that, and he puts it all together, and all his friends are like, "You're crazy, you've been in this room too long, just forget about it, it's just weird stuff, it doesn't mean anything." But it sort of goes from there, and It's another one where it's a little bit like North by Northwest, where you could imagine you're just a regular person like the main character. You could imagine yourself in that perspective, and you're like, when would you let it go, or when would you keep going? And I recommend. That's a really good suspense one as well. There's a moment where he sends his girlfriend into the guy's apartment to look for evidence, and while she's in there, the guy starts to come home, and you see him walking up the stairs, and you're like, "Oh, get out!"
Did you yell out their name? Like, "Oh, get out of that room! Get out of there! What are you doing?" Yeah, I can picture Angry Bandit sitting there. carrying a knife, yeah.
So I'd recommend Rear Window as well. Yeah. So I guess that's it for me with Hitchcock. How about you guys?
I think that's it. I got everything. Master of Suspense. Also, big creepy a-hole. Good to know. But then again, aren't we all sometimes?
Absolutely.
And with that, guys, it's time to get into our listener questions.
Excuse me. I'd like to ask you a few questions.
All right, guys, so this is the listener question portion of the show, in which case, on our Facebook, guys, we post a thing that says, "Hey, here are our listener questions," in which case we read the best ones here on the show. So for starters here, Sean Alexander asks, he says, "Hitchcock never won an Oscar. Which director currently working who hasn't won deserves to win the Best Director within the next 5 years?" He said his choice is Ryan Coogler for Fruitvale Station.
Okay.
Yeah. Coogler will have an Oscar on his mantle at this rate at some point.
If he keeps going at the rate he is, because I think he should have been at least been nominated for Creed, because Creed, in my opinion, was incredible. I love that movie.
Yeah, it was okay.
You just hate it because it's a remake and it reminds you of Force Awakens. That's okay.
No, I thought it was fine. It wasn't that great.
I think it might have been hyped up too much for you, because that happens to me sometimes.
Yeah,
when movies like, "Oh my god, it's great." I think that's what happened with Deadpool and Jungle Book. Yeah. Okay. I would go Nolan, obviously. because he hasn't won yet, and he's done so many fantastic films. It's kind of, in my opinion, it's kind of a bit of a crime that he hasn't been nominated. He hasn't been. I think he's been nominated before. Maybe, I'm not sure, but I know for a fact that he hasn't won. He should have won probably 3 times now. I don't know what came out in the year that Dark Knight came out, but I'm almost certain that it was not better than The Dark Knight. So I think Nolan.
I think it was Slumdog Millionaire.
I know Slumdog Millionaire. I know it won, but I'm not sure if it won. I don't know who won director that year. But true. Nolan should have definitely gotten that Oscar. What do you think, Trilbee?
I'm just looking to see who won the directing Oscar that year, but I'm thinking Pete Docter, who directs a lot of Pixar movies. Because obviously Pixar films win a lot of like Best Animated Feature awards and stuff, and Pete Docter has been nominated for Best Original Screenplay for WALL-E, Up, and Inside Out. But the question is Best Director Oscar, and I think that the folks at Pixar do not get nearly enough credit for the tight ship that they run. I think that they do terrific work creatively, and I think that needs to be acknowledged at some point. And Best Director for that year went to Danny Boyle for Slumdog Millionaire. David Fincher, Ron Howard, Gus Van Sant, and Stephen Daldry were nominated that year as well.
What did Stephen Daldry direct? I
literally just clicked off the page as you were asking. Stephen Daldry, because I'm terrible, The Reader.
Really?
Which is a film that no one remembers with Kate Winslet.
I remember The Reader, but that's for reasons that we'll get into later. Really? The Reader? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Oscars are such a fraud, aren't they? It's like, I mean,
Sometimes though they do like 65-year-old white dudes as of last year.
Yeah.
So now they're changing things apparently. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on board with you, Trilbee. Like, I want some directors that do animated movies to get some love. That'd be good.
Yeah.
I can't think of any specifically, apart from the ones you mentioned.
Okay. Well, I have another question here, but you guys already talked about that, so I will not do that one. You guys already talked about the Batman Superman Ultimate Cut. So, Paul Spooner asks, box office predictions for the summer. What movies will make the most?
It's tough because even the bigger films that we thought would be huge have kind of disappointed. Like we thought Warcraft, if it was great, would have made a lot of money, but it's not. Alice Through the Looking Glass is a sequel to $1 billion film that's not got off the ground.
It crashed. It's only at like 50 million domestic at this point, which is awful.
X-Men Apocalypse it's not done badly, but compared to Days of Future Past and compared to say Civil War and Deadpool, exactly, it's tough. Like, I'm just wondering what big films are left. Like, there's the summer. We've got like Fantastic Beasts. Yeah, we got Fantastic Beasts and Star Wars. That's December.
Yeah. I guess maybe Independence Day, because that can pull in a big crowd.
Yeah. After all, Jurassic World.
Massive,
so
if Ghostbusters is great, then the word of mouth might help spreading on and might actually get better.
I had somebody on my Facebook page because I'm hoping Ghostbusters is good, saying that I'm not going to see the movie because I don't want any more reboots and remakes and stuff. But I hope it gets awesome reviews so that they can be like, we made a great movie, but nobody saw it. And that's a terrible answer. That's terrible. You want them to make a good movie and then not see it.
Well, I mean, I think I get what he's saying. We don't have time to do this debate again because exactly. I think if Civil War, because Civil War's at like what 1.2 billion at this point. I guess if not Finding Dory has a shot. Obviously, Finding Dory is
good.
I mean, even if it sucks, I mean, they might. Because even some of Pixar's lowest movies have done like $600-700 million.
Well, The Good Dinosaur that lost money.
Did it really?
Yeah, that only made like 300 million worldwide, and it lost Pixar like $50-60 million, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, well, they had to redo that film at least like what two times. They scrapped the whole thing twice, right?
Yeah.
Like that was a production nightmare. I thought it was good though. I really enjoyed it. That's just my personal opinion. It was very safe, obviously, but I really enjoyed it. And it's really obvious because there's not a lot of dialogue, so you can obviously tell they scrapped the script, and like got rid of all the voice actors too. You can really tell. But Finding Dory has a shot of doing Minions money, which is like $1 billion last July. So Conjuring 2 might make some money too. The first Conjuring did like $400 million. So we still have some possible money makers. Bourne's always a big thing. The last Bourne did like $60 million opening weekend, which is pretty big. But But then that's Civil War money. Yeah, I know.
When you say The Last Born, do you mean the one with Hawkeye in it, or The Last Born with Matt Damon in it?
Well, I mean the last True Born film. So
the last Matt Damon one. Yeah.
Ultimatum. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Do you have any questions on the visitor post, Bandit?
Well, I didn't pull it up because it was interfering with the Skype.
Well, there's like two or three people have actually asked this question. So, if one of Hitchcock's films had to be remade, which one would you want it to be? Like 2 or 3 people have asked that.
Okay. If one film was to be remade, what would you want it to be?
Yeah.
I think you could do something really creative with the birds. I mean, you go obviously Birdemic would be the immediate
shock and terror.
Yep.
Yeah, Angry Birds.
That's original. Call it Angry Birds.
Angry Birds is just like the birds from the birds' perspective.
Yeah. I actually.
Oi, Terry, let's go kill those guys.
All right.
I agree. I think there's enough good stuff in that you could mine and sort of like purify, strip away the stuff you don't need, and make something good and unique out of it. Yeah.
Well, because the thing with like Hitchcock films is that they do so many. He really established a lot of trends and a lot of different more or less cliches now, different for these kinds of suspense thrillers. So that if you were to remake the film now, it would have to be something really different, like a Gone Girl, or a Social Network, where the thriller comes not from the cliches but from the character and story itself. But if you're just remaking the story, that story is very simplistic when looked at it with a modern perspective. Like, how many times have we seen that person's actually crazy twist now after Psycho?
Mm.
Yeah.
Actually,
yeah.
Sorry, I was going to get to the next question, but you guys finish.
No, you're good. We're done.
I think something like North by Northwest or Strangers on a Train could work in a modern context, like update it to a modern setting.
They're doing one with Ben Affleck for Strangers on the Train.
Oh yes, they are. Yeah, I forgot that was a thing. Yeah. Oh,
is Fincher still doing it, or did he leave yet? Because I thought they said Fincher and Affleck were doing Strangers on the Train. So that's exciting.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you, but I remember that news happening. Yeah, so there we go. Hollywood already beat me to it. Brilliant.
Yeah. So what were you going to say, Ben? What was the next question here?
And who's post here? So. And also, by the way, because last week we did say, let us know how you watch, how you listen to the podcast. One of our listeners, which I don't have in front of me right now, so I can't name, said he listens to it when he's driving his truck. Good for you, mate.
Attaboy. Honk the horn for us, if you will, please.
Yes. Honk the horn when you go past a bus full of kids, because they're all going to be doing that thing with their arm anyway, so beat them to it. That's
universal symbol for honking horn. Yeah.
Well, here on Visitor Post, we've got Ben Cromar, who says, all right, here's a question. What Marvel supervillain would you want to see come back into the current MCU, even if they've been killed off? He says this includes Daredevil, Jessica Jones, and other similar shows. Well, I think, if it includes Jessica Jones, we all want to see Kilgrave back.
Absolutely. That's a very simple...
Spoilers!
Oh, yeah, sorry. I just want
Were
to
you
see
honestly going to watch Jessica Jones? It's not that good, I'll be honest with you.
I've seen Jessica Jones and loved it. I've got to be the contrarian, I guess. But no, I'm joking. I've still not seen Daredevil Series 2, though.
Yeah.
Well, then we won't give that away then, because that's more recent than something from November. So,
the entire cast of Daredevil. Everyone's dead.
Everyone. No.
Oh, actually. Sorry, go on. I cut you off in the middle of making a joke. Please continue.
You talking to me, or are you talking to...
Yes.
I don't even know what's going on.
No. Go off on one of your impressions or something, and I cut you off.
No, I just did a quick Gary Oldman joke. No, you go on ahead.
All right, yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to go on a sidetrack. I think a week ago we were talking about if they didn't get Spider-Man for Civil War, who were they going to slot in then? Since then, some people have said maybe Netflix Daredevil is who they were going to bring in. Or maybe Jessica Jones or something in Spider-Man's place.
They said they were just going to keep Black Panther and like give him, I guess, a bigger role with more. Because originally, I think they said they had a script where Black Panther served the Spider-Man role, but ultimately, the Spider-Man role in this film was not really what the Spider-Man role in the Civil War comic was. Of kind of where he's kind of drawn between two different sides. Ultimately, that's he really was there just to serve for Tony Stark. But anyways, you can go on ahead. But yeah, Kilgrave, bring back Kilgrave, please.
But if we're talking just the movies and not the shows, I want to see Red Skull again. Bring back Red Skull, even if you have to change actors. Just bring him back. I want to see him.
That'll be great. They didn't kill Bloody What's-His-Face from Civil War, which isn't a spoiler. It's been out for a month now, so they didn't kill What's-His-Face.
Yeah.
I would really like to see them try to retake on the Mandarin, because they really crap the bed with that one, and it really ruins that movie for me. So they really screwed up there. That was a loaded beef shank.
Yeah,
trying
we
to
talked about that news a bit. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. But anyways, yeah, they try to bring back the Mandarin, kind of do that whole thing over Phase 4, or maybe they can get Dr. Doom right finally, because Fox has tried doing it 4 times and it has failed every single time. So,
Well, I think that's most of them, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, there's quite a few here.
Yeah, we've got a lot of really good ones, but we're on the clock. We've already kind of overran, haven't we?
Yeah, it's like 1:30 a.m. where you are, Trilbee.
Correct.
We're at like 7.5 hours here, so that's usually when we close off here. We're all a little tired today. I've done a lot of walking and biking. Okay. All right, guys. Well, then that was this week's episode of Movie Mania, talking about all things Hitchcock and some of the movie news that I missed and some of your listener questions. Join us next week when we talk whatever we're talking about. Trilbee, where can people find you?
You can find me online on my website, www.trilbee.com. That's Trilbee. You can find me on my YouTube channel at Trilbee Reviews, and also on my Twitter at Trilbee Reviews. And I also do regular write-ups for geekfeed.com. Be sure to follow them on all their social media pages and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all that good stuff.
All right. Bandit, where can people find you?
People can find me on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter as Bandit Incorporated. And they can find you, Trey.
They can find me on the YouTubes, Twitters, Instagram, Facebook, all of that at either Trey White or Podcast Media. Yes, join us all next week when we talk whatever it is we decide to talk about as usual. And catch you all later, our movie maniacs.